Welcome to another exciting episode of Submission Radio. It's October 12th. I'm Dennis Grotto. I'm here with Kasper Rosalowski. We have a big show coming up for you with a lot of interesting guests and a lot of stuff to talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got a lot of stuff to talk about in this show. Just to let you guys know, the guests for today are none other than Jake the Juggernaut Ellenberger. He's going to be on the show. We've got Browne, Bad Boy, Ebersole, and of course we've got John Hackleman, absolute legend, pit master, and he's going to be talking about UFC 179 and Glover Teixeira. Tons of things to talk about. Obviously, Bellator 120 is in the books and World Series of Fighting. There's no UFC this weekend, but it doesn't mean the MMA action stops, and we are here to talk about it. Right, Dennis?
That's right, Cass. And the big thing, the big announcement for all you guys listening right now, and this is just broken, so you'll be the first to know about it. Submission Radio is now an official part of SB Nation. Isn't that right, Cass?
Whip out the clowns, whip out the balloons and the streamers. It's official. Submission Radio, SB Nation, in bed together, and boy, are we a great couple.
Yeah, that's right. So great websites like Bloody Elbow, MMAfighting.com, MMA Mania, all the great guys there. Look forward to some cross-promotional madness coming from you guys. Obviously, some great guys working on those websites, such as Nate Wilcox and the like. So very excited about the future with SB Nation. You know, Submission Radio will still stay the same sexy program, just working with a sexy bunch of people. So it seems like a very good fit, Cass. Now, this week, we have a very exciting event for all the MMA fans here in Melbourne, Australia. Kyle Noak, Mark Hunt, Alexander Gustafsson, Cowboy Cerrone, they'll be doing a seminar here in Melbourne, 15th of October at Hammers Gym, and on the 16th of October, they'll be at the new MMA Fight Store. I went past the Fight Store. It's in a sexy new location, and I like it.
Yeah, and don't worry, Sydney, we haven't forgotten about you either, or I should say the guys at Everything MMA haven't forgotten about you. Alexander Gustafsson, Mark Conlock, and Cowboy Cerrone will be at the Sydney Fitness Show on the 18th and 19th of October. Sydney Showground, Olympic Park, seminar, appearance, open workouts, and of course, if you're in Melbourne, you can have dinner with the guys, so it'll be very interesting, and we will not be at the dinner, but we want to hear from you. What's everyone eating? What's the goss? What's everyone's dinner habits? How does Mark Hunt eat his chicken? You know, is Cowboy Cerrone going to surprise us and use chopsticks to drink his Bud Light? I don't know, but I want to know. If
elbows on tables. Come on, guys.
Wouldn't surprise me at all, you know. If you guys want any more information, or if you want to still get tickets, jump on everythingmma.com.au or jump on mmafightstore.com.au. I believe you can still buy tickets, but they're running out very quickly. We'll be at the seminar. We'll be there checking things out. We'll be doing a few recordings. If you're lucky, you might get on camera. But it's going to be sick. I mean, these four guys, between the four of them, there's a lot that they can teach. So, yeah, that's going to be an experience and a half.
Yeah, that's right, guys. And, you know, like Casper mentioned, we got Bryan Ebersole first, followed by Jake Ellenberger, and then John Hackleman, one of the big legends there in MMA coaching. And, you know, we're going to jump to Bryan Ebersole in a second. Before we jump to him, Cass, you know, a lot of respect for Bryan. Obviously, he's been in the sport for a very long time. It's a pleasure to have him on the show. We've been meaning to get him on the show for a while, and, you know, we were very happy to see him get that big win over John Howard at UFC 178.
All right, guys, our next guest is one of the most fun fighters in MMA. He's currently a welterweight in the UFC, and today he's live on Submission Radio. He's none other than Bad Boy Bryan Ebersole. Welcome to Submission Radio. How are you, Bryan?
Hey, good. I'm sitting in my hometown post-fight, happy and healthy, and just enjoying a little bit of downtime.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. Exactly. Post-fight, you know, you had a big win against John Howard at UFC 178. You know, tell us how you feel about the fight and how good does it feel to be back in the win column?
Well, getting back in the win column is, you know, kind of the most important thing as far as, you know, managing your career. You know, all the fights in the UFC are tough. The UFC understands that. Some guys get a little bit of a longer lead if they're entertaining and things like that. But with my age, getting a little bit older, you know, just being entertaining might not be enough for him to want to keep me in a stacked division. So, you know, I need to keep winning fights. So whether it was lackluster or whether it was my best fight, you know, I think it was somewhere in the middle. I'm just happy to have gotten the win and have the opportunity to have another fight next year.
Now, there was a nail-biting moment where, you know, when they were reading out the scorecards and it went to a split decision. How confident were you that you were going to get your hand raised?
I mean, I've been in that position so many times, to be fair, with the split decisions. You know, I lost the one against James Head where I didn't think I lost the fight because I didn't get hit very much, and I thought I was aggressive because I was, you know, shooting a bunch of double legs. But then I watched the video, and I can see how me shooting the double legs and him defending made him look good.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't always know based on feel how the judges are going to see it. So I thought I was pretty much ahead in the third round. Obviously, the first 2 rounds we split, and that was based on grappling, being on top or bottom. And I assumed he won the second round. But thankfully, he didn't beat me up and hit me very much. So coming out in the third round, I had plenty of energy, and my energy bar as far as damage wasn't real low. I wasn't hobbled.
Mm-hmm.
So I tried to throw as many combos as I could. I tried to make the most out of the clinch opportunities and show that I was pushing forward and that he wasn't scaring me and pushing me back and making me run. So yeah, I just did the best I could pushing forward. And, with the Muay Thai, background that we both got, I felt that I won the scoring because I was finishing a lot of my combos, with kicks and trying to throw knees and elbows in the clinch. So yeah, I guess, in my mind, confident, but again, the judges, you just never know.
Yeah, exactly. Now, after the fight, you're walking out. Just want to say, Brian, thank you so much for the personal shout out to us. And by that I mean, after the fight, you mentioned thanks Melbourne. So we'll take it. Now, John,
Absolutely.
now John Howard, he usually shaves some pretty funky things into his hair going to fights, and of course, you've got the Hairrow. Were you at all intimidated by his styled hair? And did you feel like, to a degree, it was a hair versus hair match?
Well, there was a little bit of manscaping going on, and I didn't get quite as detailed as I did with the tap-out logo way back in UFC 140. I just tried to edge mine the best I could. I knew people might think mine was a little bit shoddy compared to his tightly lined head. But in the end, he spent a lot of time manscaping. I did a nice, quick, simple one, kept my mind on the fight, stayed focused, and tried to take care of business.
Now, word on the street is that you just had your honeymoon this past week. Is it true that the beast known as the White Anderson Silva has been tamed? And if so, where were you taking your lucky wife?
Yes, she made me marry her, and one of the best decisions I think I've ever made as far as career management goes. Nice long-term investment, that one.
Yeah.
And we enjoyed ourselves. I don't know if she'll be able to tame me fully, but she'll try her best, and I'll appreciate it. We spent the week in Vegas. So we did the Grand Canyon. We did some Cirque du Soleil. We did some amazing food. Some of the best artists in the world are out there in Vegas. So we tried to get around and really enjoy that and just be around that kind of stuff. So yeah, we enjoyed a pretty good week out there. The weather was nice. After leaving Melbourne, it was a nice change to have a bit of heat and be able to wear a singlet for once.
Yeah.
So, but now we're back in Illinois. It's a bit nippy again. It feels like Melbourne. And she's covering up the shoulders a bit and shivering.
Now, Brian, obviously it was a great win for you. I'm just wondering, you've had so many great wins in your career. Where do you think this puts you in the welterweight division right now? And, what do you see next for yourself? Obviously, you're such a great veteran. Is the title still something that's on your mind, being in the UFC?
Well, I screwed up. I took that fight against James Head being greedy, even though I was a bit injured coming out of the Waldberger fight. I thought, I can take this guy down and submit him, and I should have, to be honest. I just didn't get it done on the night. When I was on top of him, I felt quite comfortable. I just didn't get the job done. So, that ruined me a little bit. And then my next fight, a year later, coming back, is Rick Story. So that could have put me right there, had I won that fight. So, having lost those 2 fights really set me back. I've just beat another tough veteran in John Howard, who's done some pretty good things and beat some pretty good people. But I think I'm pretty much right where I always was. I'm middle of the pack right now. So they can take me one way or the other. I've had 6 really tough fights. I'm not going to complain if they give me an Ultimate Fighter kid for my next fight. But I'm not going to be surprised if they give me, one of the guys that just fell out of the top 10 either. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, absolutely. Because, your last fight, like you mentioned, was against Rick Story. It was in November last year. So I'm just wondering, why the long break in between fights? Did you have something going on in between there? I know you're a big part of Tiger Muay Thai over there in Thailand. What sort of played into the big break there?
Well, yeah, I coach over at Tiger Muay Thai, and to be fair, if I wasn't coaching over there, I probably wouldn't even have fought this year. It was actually me being there and being around the sport that, kept me wanting to get back in. But being being injured as I've been for the last couple of years, I've really got to consider getting into a fight camp. There's times where, I'll spar, and this is in the last 4 years. There's been instances where I've sparred or wrestled hard, and I haven't been able to walk upright for like 4 days.
Wow.
So that's not really a good position to be in to say I want to go into fight camp. But we had an awesome new hire out in Thailand. We had a guy named John Priest, who was a former Vegas strength and conditioning guy. He's out there living in Thailand now. I was working with him privately, and just as I left the country, he got his work permit and started working for Tiger. But I had him kind of to my own, and he helped me rebuild my core and rebuild my body in a structural manner with mobility and strength. And with confidence doing that, S&C and whatnot, I was able to start wrestling more. And same thing, I tried not to wrestle every single day because I didn't want that, that hobbled state. So I tried to wrestle every other day, and I tried to do my striking, the other couple of days of the week. And, every day was S&C, just making sure my body's warm and I'm activating my muscles properly and doing the things. So, the big breaks have been due to injury, not because I didn't want to fight, believe me. I was in my prime, and I was pretty happy in my early 30s. Now I'm starting to shade toward 35, and I'm a little nervous that the window is closing too quick. So as far as the title run goes, I'm only one win into a new run, and it took me a year and a half to get the 4 wins, and I know I'm going to have to go do that again to even, properly be in the picture, let alone, have the UFC look at me. I mean, I can always ask for a title fight, but they can always laugh at me too. So I got a bit of work to do before I open my mouth.
Gotcha. Well, let's talk a little bit about how that run started. We'll go back to your first fight in the UFC. It was a last-minute change-up. It was at UFC 127 in Sydney, Australia. Carlos Condit was going to fight Chris Lytle. Carlos was injured, and you got the spot last minute. And what followed was nothing short of pure entertainment and skill. You absolutely shut down and destroyed a veteran like Chris Lytle. Dennis and myself were there live. It was absolutely awesome. Tell us what was going through your mind during the fight. That here you are, a guy known by many hardcore fans, putting on a clinic on such a big stage against a veteran like Chris Lytle.
I mean, we've all watched Chris fight, and he's very entertaining. But a lot of people tend to stand and bang with him, and there's some people that aren't good enough to wrestle with him. So, I'd hoped I was going to get takedowns, and to be fair, he gave me a couple by pulling guillotine and trying to lock me up in a tight guard to finish. So strategic errors on his part possibly, worked out in my favor. But to be fair, in the second round, if it wasn't for that missed takedown that led to him back against the cage and me throwing that big knee up the middle, that was going to be a much harder fight to win. I think he recovered, but in the third round, I think he knew that he was on the losing end of the decision, and he had one of two options. One was to finish out the fight without getting hurt, and the other one was to try to throw bombs. And I think he teetered between those two strategies. There was times he'd throw a big combo, but then he wouldn't chase me because he knew he was going to get taken down and possibly beat up a little bit again. So, you could see him, get aggressive, then he would back off, and he would stay off for a while. And then you could see him, that pride started to well up inside him again. He went, fuck it, let's go try to knock this guy out again.
Yeah.
So the third round was that big game of kind of like bull and matador. But I still ended up with a takedown or two and shut him down in the clinch. And, each round my confidence grew, obviously, and they talk about jitters being in the octagon. That didn't really hit me. The only thing that hit me was the emotion of walking in and finally being there, and then obviously the emotion of getting a win, and albeit an impressive one, and being able to walk out with my health and with my head held high.
Absolutely. And, that fight easily stole the show. Everybody was buzzing about afterwards. And Dana White was, on his feet clapping through a lot of it. What was your reaction like? You're not only making your debut for the company, but, Dana White is loving your work. And did he say much to you after your fight?
In the press conference, he said, he liked to watch me fight. It was a great fight. And in subsequent press conferences, he kind of said the same thing. Didn't get much out of him except that envelope with the check in it for the fight of the night bonus, and to be fair, that's all I needed or wanted out of him.
Yeah.
That changed my life. That put me debt free, and put me in a position, as a mixed martial artist / business person, thinking of the sport as my business. I was finally out of the red. kind of like the UFC went $44 million in the red, that big story before they ever made any money. Well, the UFC was my turning point. They were my ultimate fighter. I was in the red. I put my whole life into it. I lived poor. I, borrowed and had to pay people back. Just before a fight, hey, Dad, I need $500 because I'm not going to work this month. I got a fight coming up. So I'd have to pay him back out of my fight check and, things like that. It was always, just above the line, below the line, just above the line, below the line. Well, finally, I'm in a position with no debt where I was above the line and I could really make some good decisions on how I wanted to proceed, knowing exactly what my next payday was going to be. There was no mystery that, I was going to go make 8-8 my next fight, and things like that. So, off of that first fight, and Dana recognizing me, getting that bonus is what really mattered, and that changed everything.
We obviously sort of went out there and you made yourself stand out. Now, speaking of bonuses, there was also the Dennis Hallman incident where he decided that he was going to bring sexy back and wear speedos in your fight. You ended up knocking him out via devastating ground and pound. Is it true that Dana gave you a bonus for getting rid of Dennis's pasty gams from TV so quickly?
That was his exact quote at the press conference. Yeah, I think the way it played out was there were a couple knockouts on the night, but there were no submissions. So the submission of the night bonus was up for grabs, and I made the next best story of the night. Vitor was sitting next to me, and they gave him the knockout of the night bonus, and I hung my head a little bit because I thought that's the only one I was in the running for. Fight of the night bonus, went to a couple other guys, and then he announced my bonus last, and whoa, what a cool feeling, Yeah. Like I said, I'd already been debt-free, so that set me up to be able to invest in myself. In the end, I ended up buying a small home back in my hometown where I'm at now. So that's what I did with that money, and hopefully that'll end up being a good investment. But, again, life-changing. I never thought I'd be able to, buy an investment property before I ever bought my first home.
Now, Browne, a technique that you often use that's a little bit unorthodox is the hammer fist to the thigh. It's one of your many unorthodox techniques. And we're just wondering, can we get a little bit of a story behind that technique? Is it to get to target the thigh? Oh, does it?
It hurts. Yeah. Wow. And it's way more accurate than a leg kick. Sometimes you throw a leg kick, you might land, up on the high thigh. Other times you might land just, near the knee. I hit nice and low every time I hit that down near the knee with that hammer fist, and that's the most sensitive part of the ITB and quad and everything. So if I can put a couple of hammer fists there and then a leg kick or 3 on top of that, when I fought John Howard, I put a couple hammer fists there, and I put a couple nice knees in our first clinch against the cage on that same spot. So, I really try to target that just above the knee, that thin part of the muscle, and try to get into that bone and bruise that bone.
So with that one, because a lot of people sort of think, is he setting up takedowns? Is it like a fake out while dealing damage? But in this case, it really is basically about dealing damage, correct?
Most of the time, I throw the punch more often than not. But you've seen me take people down with the takedown, similar, like where I push the shoulder or the neck and I pull that knee instead of punching it. That's how I set up the Chris Lytle, the big knee. Actually, that's what put him into the cage. Because I went high with one hand and I picked his knee instead of hitting it with the other, and he went off balance, and I just walked back and threw that knee. So, and I took him down with that same takedown as well, one time out in the middle of the cage. So, it's kind of all of the above. It's a bit of a mixed bag as far as technique, and sometimes when I level change, I don't know what I'm going to do when I'm halfway there.
Absolutely. Now, one of the other calling cards from Browne Ebersole is obviously the Hairrow. Now, there's been a lot of stories and a lot of people that may already know. But for those that don't, what's the secret and the reasoning behind the Hairrow on your chest and the front section? Tell us a little bit about the history, behind the multi-million-dollar look that you bring to the octagon.
Well, it's a bit of a funny one, and it originated in Australia. I had a middleweight fight versus a kid from South Africa who'd been training at Tiger Muay Thai for about 18 months, maybe 2 years at the time. And because of Tiger Muay Thai's marketing, model at the time, they tried to put everything they could up on YouTube for content. So grappling matches, Muay Thai fights, all that kind of stuff that their athletes did, or any guests associated with Tiger Muay Thai, they would make these films and put them up. So I was able to see this kid do a grappling competition and a couple Muay Thai fights. Long story short, I knew I was going to take him down and try to beat him up. He's training at Tiger Muay Thai, so I trusted that he might be decent there. And he was a blue belt, and I watched him compete as a blue belt, and I was not impressed. Not to be rude, I just wasn't impressed with his level at blue belt, not dominating the competition. I said, well, I think I would have dominated that competition, so I'm pretty happy if I take this guy down. So after the weigh-in, I decided to be a bit cheeky, and the day of the fight, I shaved an arrow into the chest, and I left a goatee on my chin. And as we came out for the rules meeting and everything, I told him he had to hit me in the chin to beat me. And it was nothing that he didn't know, and it's nothing I didn't know, and it's probably nothing most of the educated fans in the crowd didn't know. But I just figured I'd reiterate. And lo and behold, I got a choke about a minute and a half into the fight. So I didn't have to, pay too badly for my cheekiness.
Wow. Now, how long does it normally take for you to prepare the entity that is known as the Hairrow? Take us through the process, and how far out from a fight are you starting the Hairrow camp?
Well, I definitely, take care of the body hair with a bit of shampoo, conditioner, keep it strong. I don't really dig the split ends. I try not to go through and really nitpick at it and do it one at a time. So I will trim the whole thing up a time or two and let it come in nice and thick. Mm-hmm. And it's a fight day situation. I still get fans to this day, why didn't you have that Hairrow at the weigh-in this time? Mm-hmm. And I ask them, I go, what time did I ever have the Hairrow at the weigh-in? I weigh in almost naked every single time. You've never seen the Hairrow. Are you drunk all the time? Are you drunk right now? Those are the first couple of questions I ask them. So, they always say, where is it at the weigh-in? I said, it's never been to a weigh-in. Ever. So it's a fight day thing. There's nothing to do on fight day. You don't want to go running around wasting your energy. You don't want to sleep all day and feel lethargic. So you try to find that middle ground, and that's just one of those, 25, 30-minute activities that I can put my mind to. And, I know I'm not, like I said, out there running the streets. I'm not walking 5-6 miles in the Vegas heat up and down the strip just to entertain myself. But again, I'm not just sitting back on the bed or on the couch sleeping either. So, yeah, just part of the day.
Now, Browne, you're a very creative guy, and everybody sees you as a real martial artist. An artist, is a real word that stands out there. And I'm just wondering, where did all of this come from? Your techniques are unorthodox. You've got this interesting look. You're a great talker, and you really stand out from the crowd when it comes to the sport of MMA. I'm just wondering, what do you sort of write that down to? What do you think motivates you? It really seems like you have an artistic side to yourself. Is that an accurate statement?
Yeah, it took me a long time, one, to realize it, and probably even longer to acknowledge it. As a kid, I did my homework. I was, pretty smart kid. I like to doodle on the side of my page just like anyone else and whatnot. I wasn't into, real art, drawing and painting, and that's probably because I wasn't skilled at it right away, but the things I was skilled at, I tried to use my scientific/mathematical brain to do things the best I could physically, but also mentally. I realized a long time ago that, when you're going through a chain of movement, whether it's punching or a wrestling movement, there's kind of a cadence to it. So everything you do, it becomes almost like a dance. Well, what do you dance to? You dance to music. So the way I think about everything, it all ties back in. You can make analogies that are parallel to many other, artistic endeavors. So the wrestling thing became, music and dancing. The music's in your head, the dancing's, the ABCs of what you're trying to do. And obviously you start learning boxing and things like that. And that's all on a cadence. You can take a 4-punch combination, and if you think of that 4 punches like a drum beat, boom, 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 evenly spread out, but you can start to change that to any rhythm you want. Well, that changes the actual physical look of the combo. It might change the power, the angle. Obviously, it's changing the cadence and the timing of it. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I guess just my mind working on things and trying to find a way to make it make sense to me, and then how I can change it to suit me better, because I don't like doing things the exact way a boxer or a Thai boxer does, even other wrestlers and jiu-jitsu guys. So I find out what their cadence is and what's working. I find out what grips and what things, and then I try to make my own little mix, because I don't have every gift that maybe the guy showing me does, and vice versa. When I teach, I try to teach it where certain things are fundamental, other things are slightly variable based on the individual.
Well, that's very interesting that you say that because you mentioned it just before in the interview you did have a couple of losses. James had Rick's story, and that was really the first time in a long, long time. You've been on a winning streak for a really long time, and I'm just wondering, do you feel like there's much pressure? People see you as an exciting fighter. They see you as someone that does unorthodox techniques, but sometimes these techniques, don't exactly put you in those best positions in fights. Going forward, are you going to focus more on an effective game plan, or will you still, harness some of the creative energy in your fights? Because I saw a post-fight interview with you, Brian, where you spoke about, in some of your fights, like with James and Rick, you were sort of on your back and you thought, like you were there and you thought you could have gotten out, but, something happened and, you really wanted to be more aggressive. So I'm just wondering, after this John Howard fight, what kind of Brian can we look forward to in the future?
Well, it's going to depend on my opponent, and it always does. Depending on what you think you can get away with without taking damage. There's always a preconceived idea, and then you get in the ring in a moment. There's always kind of a new conceived idea. Like there were things I thought I could do to John Howard that never happened. I got one front headlock the whole fight. I thought I would end up in 2 or 3 of those and possibly getting takedowns off of them. So, it really does depend on the opponent and what I think I can do going in to the fight. And again, once you get in there, making those adjustments, the same as a football team at halftime. Sometimes that minute on the stool and a little bit of a chat and a little bit of a think yourself can really change, the way you go play. And there's some guys where a tighter game's going to suit me, and other guys where if I open it up, I might win those scrambles and outrun a guy. So, in the end, both sides are within me, and I can't really say until I'm in there on a day how I feel. And usually it's after the first round I kind of really make my mind up on which game I'm going to play.
Very interesting. Now, Brian, you mentioned recently at the UFC 178 media scrum that some of your fights aren't listed up on Sherdog Fight Finder, and that's because they were in bars and places like, Louisiana. Can you tell us about those fights, and how many do you think there were, and have you had any crazy experiences in those kind of places and areas?
It was just when the sport was unregulated and it wasn't really a big thing. It was still very much on the fringe. The UFC itself was, wasn't even big at the time. So all these small shows, the only people that came up were, people that cared about the athlete. And every now and again, you just get someone that showed up because they were in the gym or in some gym and they just wanted to go watch it. But most of the time there was a connection directly to the fighters that were fighting if people were there. So it ended up being like a high school football game, basketball game, wrestling match where, you get the screaming, you get everyone really emotional, you get parents in there trying to rush the ring. You get people falling out of the ring onto scores tables because, people hadn't seen enough rounds to know what some of the potential dangers were. So until something happens the first time, you don't plan against it or plan for it. So yeah, I definitely saw a lot of the stuff that you shouldn't see. You go to certain fights without a real doctor. You go to fights where, you're not going to make any money unless you win, things like that. So it was pretty rough days back then, 2000, 2002, 2004. But as I started to move out to California, the level got a little bit better. As I came to Australia, people over in Australia are really trying to do the right thing and trying to do it well. So as much as I saw some of the outside of the ring issues, like with the medicals or licensing and lack of commission and things like that, the promoters themselves were really trying to take care of the athletes and entice them, one, into performing well, and two, into selling tickets to make the show a success. And I think that's the one thing Australia's done really well is I find that a lot of promoters are willing to give athletes a percentage of the ticket to help them fill the house. So that makes the athlete feel like they're part of the business and part of the business plan and the success. And that really gives them incentives because they're not making a whole lot of money for fighting. I know more guys making more money off the ticket sales than they are the fight. And maybe that's the way it should be, to be fair. I mean, if you're going to be a business partner with someone and you want them to put you on every show, well, you better give them a good reason to put you on every show. And if you're selling 500 tickets and you're not getting a cut of it, well, then you need to make a new arrangement with your promoter as well. So I think what's going on in Australia and what's, the way it started when I first got there anyway, I think they were at a pretty high level compared to what I was used to back in Illinois, Indiana, Louisiana, states like that.
Wow, go Australia. And, I feel like it is improving steadily here, and hopefully the cage will be legalized here in Victoria because, that's obviously an issue. Now, Brian, before we jump to the tap out round, I just have one more question for you about the media scrum. You were on the same card as Brash Young, Irish fighter Conor McGregor. I'm just wondering, you made some comments about, being on the same card as him. What are your thoughts on the young man?
I'm just answering questions about this young guy that people keep bringing up. I don't really want to talk about him. I don't want to give him any more media. He's doing fine creating that himself, and he's doing it in a way that, as an older generation fighter, I don't always agree with. Maybe when I was 25, I'd have found it funny, or I'd have, supported him. Maybe I'd have done different interviews and whatnot. But as an older, elder statesman of the sport, I don't know. Like I said, Tito got a pretty rough critique a long time before he got on The Ultimate Fighter. Then people said, oh, I've seen the soft side of Tito. He cares about people. He's a good coach, blah, blah, blah. And then since then, his arguments with Dana and what he's done on Bellator recently, people are all back to the old Tito. Conor McGregor's been thrown in the spotlight. I don't know what kind of person he was or how he behaved before he ever got in the UFC. So in the end, he's just dealing with, again, questions that people are asking him. I don't think he really has to go out and seek media. I think he's got plenty of that coming right to his door. And, I talk about a lot of subjects that I didn't even know I had an opinion on until someone asked me about it.
Yeah.
So, when someone makes you answer a question, I guess you got to answer it. And he's doing it in the way that, one, he knows how, two, that he obviously feels comfortable with, even if it's controversial or a little bit inflammatory towards an opponent, future, past, present. Like I said, he's just doing his thing. So more power to him. It is frustrating that he's making more money than most of us veterans in only his fourth fight. But apparently, as Dana and Lorenzo say, he moves the needle. So maybe he is like the Aussies that sell some tickets to their own fights and make money doing that. Maybe they're compensating him for ticket/pay-per-view sales. And they've given him a nice contract because of that.
It would certainly seem that way. Now, speaking of questions, Brian, we've got a whole bunch of fun ones in what we call the Submission Radio Tap-Out Round. It's kind of like word association.
All right.
We ask you some fun questions, and you basically answer with the first thing that comes to your head. Are you ready?
Yeah, I'm in.
Alrighty. So, you seem like the kind of guy who's very comfortable in his own skin, isn't too bothered by what people think.
Naked.
What's that?
Naked.
Oh, man. You and me both.
You said comfortable in your own skin. So
Yeah.
Is that what we're meant to do? Like, kind of? That word association? Is that...
Well, you jumped the gun a little bit. I haven't actually fired off the question, but you know what? I like it.
That was a big lead-in.
You know what? I appreciate the enthusiasm, so that's good. I guess the question is, tell us what's something about Brian Ebersole that people don't know.
Soft-hearted.
Okay.
You fought guys all over the world and a lot of big names over the years. What would you say has been your favorite fight thus far?
Alexei Veselazarov in New Jersey.
Okay, everybody check that one out. This one has a bit of a lead-in as well, Brian. All right, the Submission Radio department have come up with some alternate things to shave into your chest for your next fight, and you have to choose from the following, all right? So the first one is a cat. Second one is a maze. Third one is your phone number. Fourth one is a mystifying swell that will hypnotize your opponent and inevitably put them to sleep, thus being the only man to score a TKO without landing anything. Or the last option is a carefully sculpted portrait of your opponent's mother, which will distract them and make him uneasy about attacking you. So which one would you prefer?
Oh, man, those last two give me an upper hand in the fight, but I'm going to be the capitalist. I'm going to go with the first one, the cat, and it will be the Tiger Muay Thai cat, the really big tiger.
Nice.
And I'm going to charge them extra for sponsorship to do so.
Businessman. Now, Brian, you're pretty much an unofficial Aussie to us. We've taken you in ever since that Chris Lytle fight. So tell us, what's the best thing about living in Melbourne?
Australian Christmas. It's hot, and you barbecue, and I love it.
Yeah, everyone's jumping.
And I'll see you guys this year.
You will be here for Christmas this year?
I'll be in Sydney for Christmas this year, as a matter of fact.
Nice.
And Melbourne soon after. I'm hoping to come to Melbourne and see my team, Kimakai Martial Arts and Rise MMA, Cam Rowe, Ed Bablock, Nick Patterson, the banjo, and some of the other boys over there. And hoping to spend a week in Melbourne, maybe do a seminar or two, and hang out with some friends.
That'd be awesome if Brian Ebersole came down and did a seminar. Now, one last question, Brian. You know, your style's very unorthodox, and we feel that it deserves its own name. So again, the Submission Radio marketing department got to work for only the second time this week and came up with some names for your style. All right. So pick from the following names. All right. First one is Brian Kwando. We've got EAACHSS, Ebersole's attacking and chest hair sculpting system. The third name is I'll hammer fist whatever I want to hammer fist, thank you very much. Or the fourth one is White Anderson Silverism.
We'll go with the acronym or the initialism.
All right,
Number 2.
Ebersole's attacking and chest hair sculpting system. Brian, it's been a pleasure having you on the show. We can't wait for you to come down to Melbourne and Australia and teach all the Aussies some of your, fine art in Ebersole's attacking and chest hair sculpting system. Guys, you can follow Brian Ebersole on Twitter at TWAS Ebersole, which is the White Anderson Silver Ebersole. Thank you so much for being on the show.
I appreciate you guys.
Hey, this is Alistair Overeem, and you are listening to Submission Radio.
All right, guys. Our next guest is known as the Juggernaut, and he'll be facing Kelvin Gastelum at UFC 180 in Mexico on November the 15th. He is none other than Jake, the Juggernaut Ellenberger, and he's back on Submission Radio. Welcome back to the show, Jake. How are you?
Hey, guys. It's good to be back. I'm doing well. How about yourself?
Doing really well. Great to be chatting to you today. Welcome back to the show, Jake. It's always great to have you back on again. You've got that big fight coming up against Kelvin Gastelum at UFC 180. We see that you've already been doing some filming for the UFC 180 countdown, but judging by your Twitter, we also see that you recently got a box of Impractical Jokers DVDs. So the question is, have you actually been doing any training?
I have been, yeah. As much as the social media might portray, training's been definitely number one. Things are going well, though. Staying busy and working hard.
Awesome, Jake. Now, before we get to your training, it's been a long time in between fights. One of the things that we got to see you do is have a little stint behind the UFC Fox desk. I was just wondering, how did you enjoy the experience? And also, can you please explain to us, why is everybody always on their phones during the commercial break?
That's a good question. I'm not really sure. The experience at Fox was amazing. Something I've really been working at, put a lot of work into the last about year and a half, training for that. So it was a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to going back at it. But right now it's just, obviously priority number one is focusing on my fight, and hopefully down the road I can continue to do more stuff for Fox. But as far as the kids and their phones, man, I'm not sure what to tell you. It's that generation, though. It's the social media makes you the non-social.
Pretty much.
But I don't know. I've been guilty myself of being on my phone more than I should be.
It's all right. As long as you're sending tweets to Submission Radio, we don't mind. Quickly, now, Jake, tell us about training. What are you doing specifically to counter Kelvin's style?
I haven't really paid a lot of attention to Kelvin, what he does. I mean, I see, besides I've been training specifically with the southpaw the last probably 9 months. He's a grinder. He moves forward. So it's my focus on myself, my shape, and really being more balanced. Just continue to develop the things I've been working on the last year or so. I feel like I'm a lot faster. I can beat him anywhere. But the focus is more on my training and just feeling good and then doing better with my weight management.
That's interesting. I mean, my next question was going to be, what do you see as Kelvin's most dangerous attribute and what do you see as yours? But you say you haven't paid much attention to Kelvin's style. I think a lot of, some people may go, what's going on there? Why not? Can you tell us a little bit about that mindset and that mentality? Why is it that you're not paying that much attention to his style? Do you think it's going to benefit you sort of thinking more about your style?
Well, just because, as much as the sport keeps evolving and changing, I mean, you see people are different every fight. Every fight they're different. I mean, I see what he's done typically in the past. But my focus is not on what he's going to do because, when you anticipate something and it doesn't happen, it starts to throw you completely off. But, like I said, he moves forward. He's a little bit wild, but I acknowledge what he does well, what he's had success with in the past. But for me, I've had a lot of experience. Keep my composure, staying balanced, and I know there's not a question that I'll come out with my hand raised. Whether it goes all 15 minutes or the first round.
Now, last time you were on the show, you had only recently started training at the Glendale Fight Club. How are you finding it training there, with Rhonda, Marina, Edmund, and how's your experience been training over there?
It's been amazing. Edmund's a brilliant guy, brilliant coach. I don't specifically train much with Rhonda, the females, but they are in there quite a bit. Most of my training's been with a few of the Muay Thai fighters there, and they have a lot of guys, different styles, but for me, it's just been able to develop certain concepts and understand certain concepts a lot better, which it's been great. It's been phenomenal. Things I haven't really been able to focus on in the past because I haven't had the time to. So, being able to work with him one-on-one and getting that one-on-one value, it's really, really important. I mean, it's just different than a class setting. You have somebody who believes in you and invests in you, and the same thing. I'm going to put 100% of my time and focus and believe in what we're doing. And it's been getting better and better. I feel like every week has been getting better. So I say it's everything's on point as far as leading up to Mexico.
Absolutely, Jake. And a lot of people don't know much about the Glendale Fight Club, so I'm just going to ask it on their behalf. Obviously, you mentioned you work a lot with the, Muay Thai guys there, and obviously there's a lot of great stand-up there. But I'm just wondering, before you bounced around quite a bit in terms of going and training at a whole lot of places, are you still doing that, or are you just primarily training there? And if you are there enough people there for you to train with? I know there's some great strikers, but is there enough grappling guys there and, guys to really push you, to get ready for this fight?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Glendale, they have a lot of different kind of guys. They have a few different world champs in boxing. Victor Archinian, a lot of phenomenal guys in the boxing world as well as Muay Thai. But it's a private gym. It's not open to the public. It's not one of those gyms that where everybody just comes in and takes classes. It's a very secluded gym, and that's what I think is great about being focused. And being able to stay one-on-one and bring higher sparring partners and do the camp like it should be. And people these days they're too opening. There's too much nonsense, I think, that goes on in most gyms. And it's in California there's a lot of brawn, a lot of talk, not a lot of executing. So it's when you go to the gym, it shouldn't be fun time. It shouldn't be time to just hang out with your buddies. It's time to work. So that's what I love about training in Glendale is it's no nonsense. When you go there, you're going to be working hard.
It's good. Now, speaking of training partners, also the word on the street is that Travis Browne has joined Glendale. What's it like having Harpo around, and have you had a chance to spar with him? And would you go spar?
He's quite a bit bigger than me. So most of my partners that we've hired, we brought in from other places. I haven't worked much with him. He's been there quite a bit. So we're kind of on different times working with Edmund, but yeah, he's also a guy who works hard. So I haven't specifically spent a lot of time with him, but he's working hard.
Now, we've seen a lot of pictures of you recently training with the Gracies. Are we going to see the new submission machine, Jake Ellenberger, and possibly even see you at Metamoris soon?
I've been training jiu-jitsu actually since I started fighting, but it hasn't been more of my focus and my style. But it's something that I enjoy to do. I really enjoy it. It's something you keep growing, expanding your mind. You can never stop learning, and and then Hedon Gracie's they've been a really close friend of mine. Him and Hedon are in Henner, so it's we enjoy it. I go there because I have fun and I enjoy it. I don't think it's not really extremely stressful like most training is, but there's definitely been sharpening some skills though. It's without a doubt.
When you're doing, jiu-jitsu with the Gracies and you can call it relaxing time and you're learning new things, it's always a good thing. Jake, I wanted to also talk to you briefly about your last fight. Against Robbie Lawler, didn't quite go as planned. What would you say was the biggest thing you learned from that fight?
Just there's a lot of things. Being unpredictable. I mean, for me, there's things that things that I couldn't really change. I had quite a bit of a layoff, and then I couldn't do as much running as I wanted to. But it is what it is. A big opportunity. You gotta face the music. So for me, it's a learning experience. I think Robbie is one of the top guys without a doubt. But for me, it's taking what I can out of it and moving forward. There's things I did well in that fight. There's things I didn't do well. So, for me, I know when I'm moving forward. When I'm engaging, I do well. I don't do well backing up, and things I see there's some holes you can always fill. You can always get better in certain areas. So, I've taken some. I've become more comfortable, just more balanced, more confident in offensively, defensively, and just, like I said, being more unpredictable, because that's really what it is. You see, the more unpredictable, the better. I mean, you see guys who study, same with me, guys who study my film, how did I fight the last couple of fights? Well, what am I gonna show them they haven't already seen? And then, it's a psychological game. The fighting is all a psychological game.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I don't want to dwell on the past, but I do have just one more question about that Robbie fight. A lot of fans said that you were cautious in that fight and hoped that you would pull the trigger a bit more. Now Robbie's obviously a dangerous guy. At the end of the day, you were the one in the cage. You saw things that nobody else would have seen. From your perspective, what are your thoughts? And did you feel that you fought too cautiously?
No, the thing about a guy like Robbie is you have to be in shape to fight a guy. Because he's a guy you can't let move forward. You have to get him to move backwards. And able to get into a rhythm, you have to be in the shape to do so. And I think there was certain areas where I could have been in better shape. But again, I wasn't getting as much running and doing some of the things that I wanted to do typically, as far as conditioning goes. But it's in the past. Again, there's just certain guys you have to move forward. You cannot let them move forward. You got to control the rhythm and where the fight goes. And Robbie's definitely one of those guys. He's dangerous moving forward. If you let him move forward, he's gonna get he can beat anybody absolutely.
Now, that fight was instrumental in getting Robbie a rematch for the title with Johnny Hendricks. I'm just wondering, from your perspective of being in the cage with him, and everything that you know about him now, who do you think goes over in that title rematch? Do you believe Robbie walks away the champion, or do you think Hendricks holds on to the belt?
Yeah, it's going to be a great fight. The first one was fantastic. I was there for it. I think the second one's going to be the same way. I do think, it could be either way. If I had to put a bet on the fight, I'd probably say Robbie's going to win. I think he most definitely has the skills. He's been more active, and he's been healthy. So he's got he knows what to expect going into the second fight. I think he will be the champ.
I'm glad you said that because it ties in with the next question. Basically, going back to your fight, if you win against Kelvin, UFC 180 in Mexico, that puts you right back in the mix. Have you thought much about a rematch with Robbie if you end up challenging him possibly for that title?
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, that's that's the only reason why I've been in the sport for that only reason to become world champ. And for me, I'm just my focus on myself, being healthy, being strong, and I've had to deal with some injuries, so that's been unfortunate. But it's part of the game. One of the toughest sport in the world. But without a doubt, I'm not. I'm a guy who's going to learn from failure. You're going to learn from it, and which I do. I think he'll be the champ. But looking for that world title, that quest for the belt, that lifelong dream. That's all. The only reason why I'm in the sport. That's what it's all about.
Well, speaking about studying the game, there was a big welterweight showdown between Rory McDonald and Tarak Saffiedine over the weekend. I'm just wondering, what did you think of the matchup? And, what did you think of Rory's performance? And do you think that he deserves the next logical title shot, after this big rematch happens?
He's been consistent. He's doing well. He's very calculated. He may not be the most exciting guy to watch fight, but he's been consistent. So, I don't know. I don't know. I'm sure he probably will face the winner, or I'm not really sure. But yeah, he's definitely up there in the ranking.
Okay. Now, just going back to your fight against Kelvin, fighting in Mexico, Mexico's kind of like uncharted territory. It's not exactly in your backyard. And to our knowledge, you're not Latino. So the crowd will most likely be screaming a little bit more for Kelvin. How do you feel about that going into Mexico as like the Black Knight?
It really means nothing, to be honest. I mean, whether the crowd's for you or not, it's not going to help, it's not going to help the fight. So when, and it's not the first time either. I've fought in Canada too, and just plenty times where I was not the favorite, was not the guy being rooted for. But no, it doesn't bother me either way, because when it's time to fight, it's not going to help. The crowd's not going to help you.
Well, then, of course, the fact that it will be the first time the UFC will be in Mexico, and therefore you will be in the record books. How do you feel about being a part of the first one? And are you prepared for anything specifically for the possibility of different conditions and comfort levels you may face when in Mexico?
It's huge. It's definitely a monumental event. It's going to be fun to be a part of. As an ambassador for the UFC, it's huge. But as far as the conditions, no. I'm really focused on. I've had the same routine, and my coaches have always talked about how important it is to have a routine. And being able to focus. So regardless of where we go and fight, it's staying in the same routine and it's completely being focused. So that's really all I am. We're not in Cancun, we'll put it that way. So we're completely focused on whatever it takes to win this fight.
And I'm just curious. I mean, obviously here in Australia, to us, Mexico is like, we kind of see it as like an awesome place to go on holiday. For you, it's essentially business.
Yeah.
After the fight, are you going to stay in Mexico for a bit, hang around, maybe sightsee, maybe go to Cancun, or is it going to be straight back to Glendale?
I'll spend a couple days there afterwards, kind of relax and try to enjoy a little bit of time there. But, to me, it is my first time in Mexico City, so, now, I'm going to come back to California, and I'm planning a vacation in Hawaii, so that's what I'm really looking forward to, is just kicking back, relaxing. Well, my brother's fighting in December, so after his fight, it'll be nice to be able to relax and hopefully get a little vacation, but Hawaii is the plan.
Awesome. Absolutely.
Apparently top-notch donkey shows in Mexico. Now, Jake... Obviously, Kelvin, he's a young, talented fighter. He's had some great wins in the UFC. When matching up with a guy like that, what are some of the things that you're preparing for, and what are some of the advantages that you believe you hold over Kelvin?
I really don't focus on that too much, to be honest. It's really just competing. I mean, I know I've obviously seen a lot of. I've seen a lot of adversity. I've had a lot of experience, without question. But, for me, I'm looking forward to his style. He moves forward. He's not afraid to get in your face, and that's really when I do best. It's hard to. I don't do well fighting guys on the outside, and I don't do well when I'm backing up. And I do know that. So, for a guy more like him who's more aggressive, I think the best really comes out in me. But we've really, my coach Edmund, I was just with him a little bit ago, and we've, with sparring, with getting more comfortable, having better balance, and in really all different areas, and just we've really crossed some big landmarks, really moving in the right direction. So I think these last couple months we've had a lot of breakthroughs. But it's again, you can always prepare for a certain guy, but just you expect the unexpected. It's all about who can be more unpredictable. And I know I'm a completely different fighter than the guy he's going to watch my last fight. He can watch the last few. You know what I mean? There's things that I've been working on, different things that that I think that I can really expose. But again, it's about me. It's about what I can do and pull the trigger, you know, and just getting, you know, where I do well. I do well moving forward. I do well keeping the pressure on guys, and so that's where I got to stay.
Yeah, absolutely, Jake. And, you fought some really tough competition lately, and you sound very, very strong mentally. And I guess more on a serious note, you're in a position currently where, you are coming back off consecutive losses, and this is the first time in your MMA career, I believe, something like this has happened. So I'm just wondering, mentally, does it put more pressure on you in this upcoming fight? And just explain to us, how do you deal mentally with this? Because we're not athletes, and okay, when I was single, I'd go to the club and I get turned down consecutively, and that's probably the closest I'll ever get to understanding what it could feel like. So yeah, just take us through the process there. What's going through your mind there?
It's really the thing about mixed martial arts. It really truly is an art, and every fight is so different from one to the other. Every opponent's different, but at the same time, so are we. We're so, as a martial artist, you're very impressionable, and you're very sculptable and moldable. So it's cool to learn things as much, as many years as I've spent in the sport and learning. You keep having an open mind and being able to learn different things. You just keep your mind open. Like, there's things that I've been able to do as far as other traditional martial arts that I've never really spent a lot of time on, and just kind of keeps expanding your mind. But as far as focus, competition's competition. I mean, for me, it's all about how you feel. The energy you have, how you feel, the confidence, and it's really what you put in your mind to focus on. And for me, it's a great another opportunity to really show my potential, and that in itself is exciting. If you feel good, you enjoy what you're doing, and you're going to do well. I don't look at I have faced adversity. I've fought, some of the best guys in the world, and it's really using that as my advantage moving forward. But again, my focus is all on my being at my optimal potential and executing.
Very well said, Jake. And come November 15th or 16th here in Australia, can't wait to see it. Now, Jake, we told everybody that you were coming down to the show, so the fans sent in a few questions. We're just going to ask you a few of the fan questions, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Okay. One Strike Clothing wants to know, how will you approach Gastelum? Will you keep it standing or use your wrestling?
That I cannot answer right now, but I am prepared to take this fight where I want to.
All right.
Now, Jake, obviously with the big title fight coming up, the Real Deal Neil, yep, that's a name right there. That's a great name. Would like to know, do you believe Johnny Hendricks is going to be a long-term champion now that he's obviously gone through his adversity with injuries, and he looks like, he's been out of the octagon for a bit?
I think he very well could be. He has the potential to, but I don't think so. Like I said, there's so many factors, so many variables too. Each fight is so different. And even Lawler and Hendricks going into the fight number 2, Robbie he knows what to expect. He's been more active. He's been healthy. He's got a lot of things, working for him into this next fight. But, I don't think so. I don't think we're going to see a guy like George St. Pierre to dominate the division again. I think those guys are, those are once in a lifetime kind of athletes. I don't see that happening again.
Yeah, it's tough to replicate. Now, Scott Beowulf wants to know, who is your favorite member of the Justice League? So in the Justice League, I believe you got Wonder Woman, Superman, Batman, The Flash, Green Lantern, guys like that. Who's your favorite one from the Justice League?
Wow, that's a good question. Probably Flash.
Yeah. I feel like if Flash was in the UFC, he'd sort of be like in the welterweight division. So I think it's a good fit. Now,
yeah.
And like the Hulk would be like the version of Brock Lesnar in heavyweight. But yeah, Cyber Titan would like to know, could you make 155 pounds And would you ever consider a move there?
No, could I? I mean, sure, anything's possible. It's pretty tough for me to make 170 as it is. You know, I'm usually about 195, and I get lean too, so it's tough. I mean, it'd be really hard to enjoy life if I was going down to that weight class. But could I do it? Sure. Am I have any plans to? No. But yeah, I don't think so. I think my career will finish at 170.
Fair enough. Now, another question from Bocal J. Bocal J's got a really simple question. He's asking Ariane or Brittany.
I'm gonna have to play the fence here and go with both. I can't. I like them both.
Well, you know what? That's fair. And you're probably gonna have to see him, so otherwise it'd get awkward. So that's probably the best answer you can give.
That's right. It's like the girl from the taco commercial. Why not have both? So
Yeah.
it makes a lot of sense. All right, Jake, it's time for the submission radio tap out round where we throw a bunch of fun questions at you and you tell us the first thing that comes to mind. Are you ready?
Let's do it.
All right. So if you could pick anyone in the world to sit behind the UFC Fox desk and break down fights with you, which combination of people would you choose from? So first choice is Steven Seagal and Butterbean. Second choice is Flavor Flav and Hulk Hogan. And third choice is Rick James and the 86 Denver Broncos. Which one do you choose?
Flavor Flav and Hulk Hogan.
Oh.
Absolutely. Hulk is awesome. Flavor would just keep it real. It'd be hard to. It would be comedy the whole time.
Yeah, I feel like in the Fox breakdowns, not enough people say brother. So I think having Hulk Hogan there would be awesome. Now, next question.
I can't really use that word a lot.
Yeah, you got it. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it doesn't suit some people. Now, our next question: out of the 4 impractical jokers, who would you say you identify with most?
Man.
I'm trying to remember. You got Sal Volcano. You've got Q, who they always say looks homeless.
I was leaning towards Sal. Yeah.
Sal, you reckon you're a Sal guy?
I think so.
That's hilarious.
Now, the next tap out question is actually sent in by a fan. The fan's name is Apollo Creed, but I don't think it's the same one from the movies. And he wants to know, do you use the cheddar flavored fried onions or regular when making a green bean casserole?
I should probably the regular.
Probably the regular,
but I'm not against. Yeah, I'm not against the cheddar one. It sounds pretty good too.
Oh, he's not against them. Good.
You don't want to be on record saying anything negative about the cheddar, basically.
Good. You've made Apollo Creed's day. Now, Jake, chess boxing is a sport. Do you think it's time for chess MMA?
Chess boxing is what you said?
Yeah, chess boxing is a sport. It's kind of like rounds. They play chess, and then I think like when the buzzer goes off, they stand up and they start boxing. And they have a round of that, and they go back to chess. So we're thinking, chess MMA. Do you think it's time for chess MMA?
Why not? There's chess boxing. Make chess MMA.
There you go.
I like the way this guy thinks.
I'm sure it would start in Russia, by the way.
Yeah, with a 3-on-3 style competition. Now, it's prediction time, Jake. Obviously, Anderson Silva's going to spend a little bit of time in your division, so we want to get the prediction. Anderson Silva versus Nick Diaz. Who comes out on top and how?
That's a payday. That's a paycheck for Diaz. He doesn't think he could actually win that fight. Come on, guys.
Look, you know what? There's a lot of people saying Diaz. I think I'm trying to think what Frank Shamrock said when he was on the show.
There's 0% chance.
All right, well there you go. You heard
hey,
me.
and I don't want to say Jake's a genius, but I went on a whole spiel about it about a few episodes ago. So Jake, you and me think a lot alike, my friend. Now, finally, Jake. How are you planning on finishing Kelvin Gastelum at UFC 180? Let the fans know to finish out the interview.
Well, he's gonna dig his own grave. When he makes a mistake, and I'll finish the fight. It's what it comes down to. Pressure causes someone to make mistakes, and I've been there. I've been on the receiving end of that. So he's gonna make a mistake, and the fight will end.
Well, Jake, we can't wait.
Assured.
We can't wait to see it. UFC 180, of course, is going to be in Mexico. It's going to be on November 15th. Because of the time difference, it's going to be November the 16th here in Australia. You can follow Jake on Twitter at Ellenberger MMA. Jake, it's been an absolute pleasure having you back on the show. Thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, sure. I got a quick funny story. Actually happened about a month ago.
Sure.
So I've been training a little bit with Mickey Rourke. He's getting ready for a big film coming up. But funny story. So I was going over to his house.
Wait, you said Mickey Rourke is in the actor, right?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Okay, go on.
Yeah, great guy. He trains a wild card. He's been boxing for some time. But,
yeah, of course.
Awesome guy. So I was going to his house. Gives me the address, and it's pretty dark. I can't see very well. I park anyway. I get out. I asked this guy who's standing down the street. I said, "Hey, is this, whatever it was, 319 or something?" And he said, "Yeah, it's right here on the left." So I go over, and he's working out. He's like, "Yeah, just come in. I'm in the back." So I walk in. Well, first I knock on the door, text him. Just come in, and there's these little dogs going crazy. I walk in the house. I'm making friends with these dogs and petting them, and then I go in, I sit down on the couch, and there's a big dog that comes in. So, I'm letting him smell it. We're making friends. We're having a good time. And so now his dog's calmed down. They like me. And so I'm just sitting in the living room, just hanging out for a little bit. And then this girl walks in and was like, she's like, "Hi." And I was like, "Oh, hey." But I could tell there's something weird by the way she said hi. I could tell that it was like a hi, like a question mark hi.
Oh man!
And she was like I was like, "Hey, is Mick here?" And she's like, "Oh, yeah." Who? And I was like, Mickey. And I was like, New York. She's like, "Oh yeah, he's next door." And I'm like, "Oh, you're kidding me." No, and this is like, we're talking like midnight. I was like, I could have been shot. Like I should have been shot. But
Oh my god.
Yeah, and I'm like, I just made friends with 5 attack dogs next door, making, this lady's wondering why I just walked into her house, into this Beverly Hills mansion. But that was pretty funny. We laughed about that for a while.
That's insane. How long were you there? How long were you in the house for?
A good 10 minutes. A good 10 minutes.
Jake,
Yeah.
I feel like
there's like a gate, you walk through the gate, and then there's like another gate, and you walk through that gate, and then there's the front door. And you got the 20-foot fucking giant doors. You go through there, and it's like, it was not a quiet process. So
Did you fix yourself a drink or anything like that? Were you sitting there watching TV?
No, thank God I didn't. But
oh man,
Jake, I feel like if you ever want to retire from MMA, a cat burglar career could be right up your alley because you seem like a natural at doing this thing. And yeah, just tell us a little bit. So what have you been doing with Mickey? What have you guys been working out on? Just getting ready for his new movie, or is he a big fan of you and the UFC in general?
yeah, he's a big fight fan. He loves watching sparring. He likes to come and watch when I spar. Come out to Glendale, and big boxing fan. He used to box for years.
yeah.
And yeah, he's been training a lot, just getting ready for a big film here starting in March. But yeah, awesome guy though. He loves the fight world though. He always, big UFC fan. So yeah, it's just a good dude. We share stories.
So just before we let you go, I'm also just curious, how did this come about anyway? Just setting this up, training with Mickey Rourke.
It was funny. A friend of mine from New York City, I met him we went and had dinner. He's probably, I don't know, something with it was Randy Couture, and Mickey was there as well. And that's what I had met. I've obviously known who he is, but that was the first time I'd met him. So he was a big fan, and we shared some stories. And yeah, he would come train. He invited me to Wild Card too. He trains quite a bit there. So he's a good guy though, real good guy.
Awesome, awesome. And that was a sick story to cap that off. Again, guys, don't forget, UFC 180, November 15th or 16th if you're in Australia. And, of course, Twitter, at Ellenberger MMA. Again, thank you so much for coming on the show, Jake. And you're welcome anytime to tell us awesome stories like that.
I appreciate it, guys. Thank you.
Thank you, and good luck in your fight.
Thanks a lot.
This is Diego Sanchez, and you're listening to Submission Radio.
Our next guest is returning to the show. He's one of the most iconic trainers and coaches in MMA. Ladies and gentlemen, from the pit, we have John Hackleman. John, welcome to Submission Radio.
Hey, thanks.
Hey, it's a pleasure to have you back, John. Now, we haven't spoken to you since just after UFC 172 when Glover fought John Jones. What have you been up to since then? And what's new in the life of John Hackleman?
Training my team, training the guys, my regular students, my classes. I'm starting an online dojo, thepitonlinedojo.com, where I'm going to be doing, techniques and, just training tips on anything from getting into best shape to training for a UFC title to being a, regular martial art guy like me that just wants to be able to keep his lunch money. Other than that, just trying to stay above water,
Well, it's important for us to keep our lunch money as well, so we'll definitely be logging on there. And, speaking of techniques, we've been following you on Twitter, and you have quite a lot of cool techniques that you post up, for a whole range of athletes on there.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, it's got to take pride in that. Our system seems to work pretty good from anything from, we have a local pediatrician that happens to be a great martial artist, all the way to, UFC guys, to up-and-coming guys like, Castle Williams, still undefeated, 13-0. So, it seems to be working pretty good. Everybody seems to be getting in good shape and loving it. So, I'm pretty happy.
Tell us a little bit about this online dojo. How does it work? Is it going to be like a blog? Is it going to be like a YouTube channel? And how can we learn these techniques to become a UFC champion?
Yeah, it's going to be, there'll be a blog, and then there'll be, there'll be a lot of info every day, techniques and stuff. And then if you want to, join the dojo, you can join, and then there'll be a minimal fee, and you get extras every week,
Wow, that sounds very, very exciting. You're speaking
you could be a pit guy anywhere in the world.
So you could be a pit guy in Australia pretty much now.
Heck yeah. We love Australia down under. We just shrimp on the Barbie.
Great. Now, speaking of UFC champions, Glover Teixeira, he has not been training with you for his fight at UFC 179. Tell us about some of the other fighters who you've been training with at the pit lately, and some of the up-and-coming fighters that we might have not heard of yet that'll be making a splash on the scene soon.
Yeah. Well, Glover just stayed in Connecticut this fight because he was having, he just been going through a lot of changes and hurt his shoulder in the Jones fight, and so he's healing up. And he just, some of his buddies went over to Connecticut, so they just decided to do his camp there. I think that'll be great. He's kind of on autopilot most of the time anyway. I got, right now I'm trying to cut back on the UFC MMA team as much as I am just focusing on my dojo. But I got guys like, Castle's fighting. He trains with me. Like I say, he's 13-0 now, doing great. We got Antonio Banuelos, who's helping me train the guys, and he's teaching, actually officially instructing at the pit now, ex-UFC fighter. And then I have a couple of amateurs that are going, and then we got Court McGee, who's healing up from his wrist. He'll be back training here in no time. So we got, I got guys. My main goal and what I've wanted for a while is I have a little team here, really small, but then I have guys coming in, that I work with, and that's guys like, Glover did, he was with me full time for a long time, but, Aurora Grande, a much small town, and I'm not really willing to relocate, and I'm not really willing to take on, being a full-time coach for I did that, with for a long time, including, and Chuck was kind of like the pinnacle of the pinnacles of UFC guys. So being with him was a heck of a ride,
Yeah.
So I'm just trying to do that as more of a sideline thing, like with Court. I pick my guys and I'll work with them and help them as much as I can. But for the most part, I want to spend it just teaching everyday folk how to be the best martial artists they can be.
That's awesome. Now, well, while you mentioned Court, let's talk about him a little bit. It's been a little bit of a time in between fights for him. When can we see him back in the octagon? And how's he doing in general?
We're looking at early 2015. He's just such an incredible guy. He just had so many. He's just come through so much. He's a strong guy, and physically he's unbelievably strong. He's probably the strongest fighter I've ever had. For his weight. And he's just mentally so strong and tough, and he's just one of these guys that nobody dislikes. There's plenty of people that love me, but there's also plenty of people who can't stand me, and most people are like that, but there's not a person, I don't think, on the planet that doesn't love Court McGee. He's just this guy that all he wants to do is help everyone, and he do the right thing. He just always wants to do the right thing. And he's an incredible guy. He's an old soul. He's still in his 20s, but you'd never believe it by talking to him. So he'll be back. His wrist, he actually broke it. He had to get pins and all that, and he's been through rehab, and that's what he's been dealing with now.
Now, John, another fighter from the pit that, we were fans of is Steven Seiler. He's currently on a 3-fight losing streak. We're just wondering, how's he doing mentally? And, what has he been working on lately? Is he excited to get back in the octagon soon?
Yeah, he's another one. He's another one like Court. You'll never meet anyone that doesn't like him. In fact, the weigh-in a couple fights ago, I forget the guy's name. Really tough little wrestler, I forget his last name. Kind of long-haired guy, really dark, really good wrestler. Yeah, he's on a streak now. He's been beating everybody. But
Dennis Bermudez?
Yeah, that's him. Yeah. I didn't even know. I didn't know him. I didn't recognize him. I'm not a huge fan of the sport per se. And I see Seiler, with this guy playing video games. They're in a corner, playing on one screen. It's a little screen, on their cell phone. They're playing this game together. It's right after the weigh-ins. And it's I go to him, hey, what's up? And it was him. It was his opponent, right after the weigh-ins. I'm like, what do you guys do? Are you fighting tomorrow? And they go, yeah, we're playing this game. And they're like, that's the way Seiler is with everything. He's the calmest, coolest guy. And to be honest, he's so calm and so cool and so tough and so skilled, but he's just so calm and so cool. And sometimes that calmness and coolness gets the best of him or the worst of him. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes he's just so calm in there. He's sometimes, he's so tough, but sometimes he doesn't. He's just so calm and so cool.
Yeah.
It's hard to. I don't know how to put it, but he needs. Sometimes he just needs a little more pushing. Yeah, he's just such a calm and cool guy, and he never gets nervous. Obviously I'm not inside of him, but that sounded weird. But he just. But I'm not inside of his head, but just watching him, the way he carries on, even walking into a cage, which is just such a time of stress for almost everyone. He just never loses his cool, and sometimes he just needs to.
Mm-mm. I don't think it
So,
wasn't Chuck similar. I mean, that's why they called him the Iceman, because he just, was so
well,
cool
I
and
nicknamed him the Iceman for different reasons, actually. But Chuck was like that until he got hit, or until he hit the guy. Then he would go.
Mm.
So he was like that going up to the fight. But sometimes Seiler, even after he gets hit, he's just still like too calm and too cool.
Mm.
Because some guys get kind of almost timid when they get hit and kind of scared and kind of not wanting to engage. But Seiler's not like that at all. He's just calm and cool. He's just like, another day at the office, where he needs to step it up and realize sometimes the sense of urgency.
Mm.
So he's just like that a little too much, but he's such an exciting guy. He loves to bang, but I don't know. He's had some really close fights. He's had a couple where he should have won. I know one for sure. Most people do, that he didn't win, but he should have. But and then he has that new beautiful baby, Jaden, and there's a lot of spending. I mean, the guy's like a full-time dad and a full-time fighter, and he takes care of people. He helps everyone. He's a busy guy, and he'll be back. He'll be back. He's one of these great people that deserves the best.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you something, John. You mentioned before, I think you said you're not a big fan of the sport. What exactly did you mean by that?
Well, I mean, it doesn't mean I'm not a big fan of the sport where I have any bad feelings for the set. Like, I'm not a fan of him. In other words, I don't really like him. It's not meant like that. It's just I don't really watch fights when my guy's not fighting. I don't follow the sport much at all. I'm doing so many other things, and I love the sport. I'm a huge fan of the MMA as a sport. I think it's the best sport in the world, best athletes in the world, martial artists, with a sense of honor and Bushido. But I just don't follow it per se. So I don't really know who's like in the top 10 in any division. I don't follow most of the fights. So,
That's fair enough.
on Saturdays, I don't sit down and watch them. But I'm a huge fan of MMA as a sport and as a character building activity that has, to me, the toughest and most humble athletes on the planet. So that's that. That's what I meant by that.
Mm-mm.
Well, absolutely, John. Speaking of character building, you were a part of Team BJ Penn going back to the Ultimate Fighter, where Penn versed Edgar. And, I noticed that you were very instrumental in going back to the house and speaking to a few of the athletes. They really picked your brain, for a lot of the mental advice, and along with the physical advice that you obviously showed as a coach. I was just wondering, how was your experience on the show? Did you enjoy yourself?
Yeah, it was good. I mean, it was a last-minute thing. To be honest, like Team Edgar's, that was his team. That's his coaches. It would be like, if we did a show back in, say a few years ago, and it was me, Chuck, Glover, Antonio, because we're a team.
Mm-hmm.
And his team, Edgar's team, that's his team back home. What BJ did, he called like 3 or 4 people that he, from different parts of the country. And we don't even, we never trained together. We don't hang out together. I didn't even barely know them. But and it was a last minute thing. He called me Sunday. But no, he called me Saturday. The show started Monday.
Oh, wow.
But I love BJ, and he's a great guy, and he's from my home state, and so I did it, and it was a good bunch of guys, but it wasn't, to be honest, as much as individually they were really good guys, they weren't a team like Edgar's team was more of a team. We tried to do it, and they were, it just, like I said, it was what it was, and BJ's how he is, and he's a great guy, but he bops around between different teams a lot. I think Edgar, kind of stays training all the time and stays with the same guys, kind of like Chuck did, So it's a little different, but overall it was great. I loved hanging around. I loved hanging around with the guys and BJ, and I loved to hang around with Mark Coleman. I probably met him only once in my life, so I didn't know him at all. but we became really good friends. I really became a fan of him as a person, you know.
Well, yeah, speaking of Mark Coleman and, like you mentioned, meeting some of these guys pretty much sometimes for the first time, do you have any interesting stories of you guys behind the scenes, hanging out together, or any Mark Coleman stories that you can tell us from your experience on Tough?
There's a lot of stories, but a lot of them I can't tell. That guy is a character. One of them, he loved to go to the house. He wanted to go to the house every day. Most coaches don't do that, But he fell in love with the guys, and like he would go. I mean, the guys had a hip replacement, some kind of major, surgery, and he went in there grappling with them every day. He was like rolling with them. I mean, he's unbelievable, and he's a transparent guy. He's just like, what you see with him is what you get. He doesn't hide anything. He doesn't have any like hidden agendas. He's there. I mean, whatever's on his mind, he'll blur it out. And it's like, I really, really liked hanging out with him. I don't have any stories except he wanted to show everybody his neck cranked. And I think like 4 guys got sprained necks, including mine, because he had to show us all his neck crank that, he doesn't have. One, we were doing some takedown defense, and I was showing him some of my stuff, and he was showing me some of his, but his involved a double leg, and we're on the freaking concrete, so I thought he was just going to show me the setup for it. No, he took me all the way to the ground pretty hard on the concrete. It was like, bro, we're on the concrete. How about if I hit you with a left hook right now without any gloves on? And he laughs. Because he's just a like I said, a transparent. And I don't mean that in a bad way. He's just transparent. What you see is what you get. And I actually fell in love with him as a person. I think I wish I followed his career more, and I got to know him earlier, but in our careers, coming up, but he's a great guy. We stay in touch now, not as much as I wanted to, but we're both busy on kind of different parts of the country.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. Now,
his nickname is Grandmaster. So that's his new nickname, Grandmaster Coleman.
Grandmaster Coleman. I love it. Now, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about yourself as well, John.
Let me tell you about the story. Let me tell you Mark Coleman story. We're the assistant coaches. We weren't even really the coaches. BJ was, and they don't. Usually the assistant coaches don't go into Dana wherever they're going to make the final decisions and some of the higher end things. And I really didn't give a shit, but Mark wanted to, because Mark wanted to be involved in everything. He's that guy, and I really respect him for that. But so he started to walk in, and one of the producers or something went, "This is only for the coaches." And I looked at him and I go, Mark Coleman's fucking picture is here on the wall, because his picture's there. He's one of the, it's one of the, his picture's in the training room. I go, bro, his fucking picture's in the wall. He can go wherever the fuck he wants. And the guy looked at me, and I swear to God, he looked at Dana, and Dana goes, yeah, his picture's on the wall. He can come in. So anyway, it was pretty funny. I mean, you can't say no to Mark Coleman. And he's one of the major, contributors to the development. I mean, he invented ground and pound.
Yeah.
So yeah. But anyway, I love Mark Coleman. So what up? What's next?
That's hilarious. No, I just wanted to ask you a little bit about yourself. Obviously before you were known as the Pitmaster, you're obviously a fighter yourself. You did no holds barred. You told us last time you had a no holds barred fight. I think it was the age of 16. You did boxing.
Yeah.
But you were also a nurse. Tell us how you got into that.
I was a respiratory therapist first, because I knew towards the end of my career, one of my coaches, I knew I wasn't going to be a world champion boxer, and I knew I wasn't going to make a huge living boxing, and I have a family. So one of my coaches, while I was fighting, I was always working full time, but lower end jobs. He goes, bro, you need to get a career going. And I was like, yeah. And he happened to be a respiratory therapist, so he told me about it and how to do it and go to school and da-da-da. So I did that. And that's, it's in a hospital, and it's kind of a step below a nurse in a lot of ways, pay-wise and stuff. But it was good pay for what I was used to getting. So I did that, and I finished, got my degree, yada yada. So I'm working at the hospital, and I just realized, you can do more, you get paid more, there's more opportunities as a registered nurse, and a lot of the classes were the same when they transferred over. So, I just decided I'm going to go for it, and it was right towards the end of my career. I was only fighting once in a great while, and I had, I was working full time, so I started taking classes, and I just took class here, take class there, and next thing you know, I got my nursing degree. So I started working in the ER as a registered nurse, and I did that for years until the pit started kind of booming a lot more, and I didn't have time to do it anymore. So it was really good. I keep my license every 2 years. I renew my license and pay my fee, and just in case, just to keep it under my belt if I ever need it. I haven't been a nurse. I haven't worked as a nurse since 2002, but I'm just gonna, I'll always have that under my belt if I need it.
That's cool.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You've often expressed to us how much you don't like to see your guys get hurt. Does your nursing background have something to do with that? And the fact that you have a much deeper scientific understanding of what's happening to the guys than most trainers. And let me just follow that question up with another question. Have you ever had to use your nurse skills on the street in an emergency or anything like that, to help someone out or to save a life or anything like that?
Well, I mean, before I even go to that, I stitched up my guys all the time. In fact, when I stitched up, everyone, Chuck, I stitched him up like 5 or 6 times, and Antonio, Glover. After I stitched up Glover the last time, he goes, "Oh, thanks a lot, Coach. You just saved me like $300." I was like, $300? What year do you think this is? That's like $3,000 stitches nowadays. But anyway, yes, I stitch up all my guys, and obviously IV if they get dehydrated, but it does affect my my coaching a lot. One of my guys, his last fight, actually this was a couple months ago, maybe 2 months ago. I'm really sensitive to injuries. I've thrown in the towel for many fights, even before most doctors were to stop them. Usually they're a little quick to stop them more than the coaches. But I've actually stopped fights where the doctors has said, "No, I can go on." I said, "Nope, it's over." And my fighters know, that I'm a bleeding heart in the corner, and I just let them know, if you don't want that, go have someone else work your corner. If you come back and you're hurt, I'm going to stop the fight. And if you don't like that, have someone else work your corner. So, it does help, I think, keep them safer. Like if my guy gets dropped in a fight or even in training, he's not sparring again for, a month, 2 months, depends how bad he gets dropped. But I'll pull a guy from a fight if he gets dropped in sparring. And that's not always really, that's not really popular with the promoter or the fighter, but I'm sorry, go somewhere else. I'm not going to have my guy have a concussion then fight, 2 weeks later and risk an injury that I could have helped prevent. And like I said, that's not always a popular consensus with my fight team or promoters, but that will be, that'll, I do know, chronic brain injuries. I do know, back-to-back concussions, how that's, exponentially more dangerous than a single acute exposure or acute injury. So that's a good thing and a bad thing,
Yeah.
So that does help, and or being bad for my fighters, but it definitely is. And as for the street, I think I've done Heimlich in a restaurant once.
Oh wow!
I've never pulled over and pulled a guy out of a car and done CPR or anything. I've done CPR hundreds and hundreds of times in the ER, but on the street, I've never done CPR. I don't think.
Wow. Another thing we wanted to ask you about, obviously, Glover's not training with you, John, but obviously you've still been his trainer for a long time, so we just wanted to get your thoughts on the fight. First of all, will you still be cornering Glover for this fight, or no, it'll be the guys in Connecticut?
No, that's one of the things that, as a good and bad thing, I've been a little too honest about my some serious disdain and hatred for traveling. So he knows, like his last fight in Brazil, I didn't go, and he knows I hate to travel. So, I mean, if it was a title fight, that's one thing, but that flight is just, I just hate it. So I'm not going to Brazil that fight, I hope, unless I get last minute. Yeah. If he really needed me to go, I would go. If he really felt, he trains himself a lot, because I trained him, and, our training system is pretty intense, and it's pretty, me doing everything with, but then when he went to, had to go to Brazil for those years, he had to kind of do a lot of it himself. So even now he's really used to training himself.
Mm-hmm.
And he goes with our stuff. Like if you watch his Twitter or Facebook or whatever, he's still doing our stuff, our workouts and stuff. But, he's pretty self-directed and self-motivated in training himself. So I think he'll be fine. And I think for this fight, game plan will be pretty straightforward. Don't want to give it right now, but I will after.
Sure.
And I think his chance of winning is I love Phil Davis. I think he's a great guy, a great fighter. But I think Glover's just got a little too much, and he hits a little too hard and a little too powerful. And he's been there, done that a little too much. So I don't think it's a good fight for Phil. And but like I said, I love Phil, and I hope, I definitely hope, wish him the best. But I think Glover's just got too much, too big, too fast, too strong.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's Sammy Henson's favorite line,
Mm-hmm.
And, Phil is a great guy. He was on the show, and there's a lot of mutual respect between the two. I'm just wondering, looking at the skill set of both fighters, what are some of the dangerous areas that you think Glover needs to take into consideration about Phil Davis in this fight?
I think Phil has a lot of speed, so a lot of movement. People underestimate Glover's speed. Obviously, he has a lot of speed, a lot of fast twitch muscle. Just like Court McGee, he doesn't really come across. He kind of walks slow and acts kind of slow, not slow mentally, but he's just not a real energetic guy. He's kind of like a down-home guy, but he's also a freaking runs a mile in something just stupid, like 5 minutes and shit. And he rows a crazy 1,000-meter and does backflips, and he has unbelievable speed. Glover's the same. Glover's a crazy athlete who can do, he did a muscle up the first time he tried one.
Wow.
Overhead squats. I mean, the guy is an incredible athlete as well. So he just looks like a powerhouse, but he also has unbelievable athletic speed as well. So I think the speed, the movement, but I think Glover can match that. I think it would just be the wrestling, straight wrestling, as opposed to gay wrestling, skill sets or maybe experience that Phil obviously has more, traditional wrestling experience than Glover has. So that you might think that could be an experience, but I think that would be, overpowered by the fact that it is not a wrestling match. It is an MMA match. So I don't see many, I think Glover has all the angles covered.
And yeah, that's the thing. Obviously, Glover's got that knockout power. He's very known for his striking, but he's no slouch in the grappling department at all. So I was going to say, with Phil Davis,
he's underestimate Glover's wrestling, but he's out there. Yeah, so that's why I'm trying to, because I really like Phil, but I just see him being, kind of his biggest. I think his biggest, you would think, advantages on paper are going to be, not as much over Glover as people think.
Absolutely. Glover, he's won consecutive fights for such a long time now. Obviously, he had that tough matchup against John. I'm just wondering, mentally, what do you think Glover and, you guys as a team learned from that fight, especially going back into the octagon after a little bit of a layoff?
I think do you think the setback of the loss is going to hurt him?
Yeah, obviously Glover is strong mentally, but it's been a long time since, he's had a loss. And I'm just wondering sort of more, what did he learn from that experience?
Well, I think, to be honest, I think it's his first title fight, and no matter how much you have, it's like no matter how much experience you have in MMA, once you first hit the octagon in the UFC, a lot of people, it just like Hector Lombard, their full skill didn't show. And then obviously the second one it did, and I think then you get the lights and the being in the octagon. Glover, his first fight, did show. I mean, his being in the octagon didn't affect him. He was, he rose to the occasion. But the title fight, and him getting hurt so early in the fight, I think that was huge. I mean, can you imagine ripping your right shoulder, your dominant shoulder in the first round? I mean, against John Jones. So, it's a hard battle without ripping your shoulder.
Yeah, of course. Now, just wanted to ask you if you, we're pretty much almost done, John. I know you've spent a lot of time with us, and we really appreciate it. We just have a few fan questions. We mentioned everybody that you're coming on the show. John Hackleman is going to be on Submission Radio, and people sent in some questions. Is it okay if we ask you a couple of them?
Sure, go ahead.
Frode Fouch, he's got a few questions. First question
no sexual orientation questions.
Beg your pardon?
No questions about my sexual orientation. That's all.
All right, there go half the questions. Just kidding. Do you train your fighters the same way when it comes to striking?
I mean, do I train all my fighters the same as each other when it comes to striking?
Yeah, I think what Frode wants to know is do you have a special style that you train for Glover, a special style for Court, or do you train them all the same?
Yeah. It's the same but different. Like there's some basics that are the same. There's some fundamentals that are the same, but like when I trained Casey Olsen, who was completely a wrestler first, and he was mainly a wrestler, or Matt Lindland, it would be a lot different than when I trained Chuck Liddell, who was a wrestler but he was more of a striker, or Glover, who was he had a different style because he wasn't as linear as Chuck was. He was more of a Mike Tyson type. Court McGee's more of a punches and bunches moving guy. Antonio Banuelos was more of a mover, coming forward, trying to get the shot. Yeah, everybody's different, and I try to have some basics that are the same and some fundamentals, but yeah, everybody, I have to fit them because they're not going to fit me and be very successful.
Frode also would like to know if you have any up-and-coming fighters in the gym who have a similar style to Chuck Liddell that we might see soon.
Nope. I have a guy, probably Castle Williams, who everybody's looking at right now, including some of the, even the UFC, matchmakers are looking at him, but he has a completely different. His style is crazy. It's kind of like Cruz, and he's a mover. His spinning techniques, and it's crazy. So yeah, he's our next guy, but he is nothing like Chuck Liddell now. None of my guys right now are, to be honest. Chuck Liddell I don't know if another Chuck Liddell will come along.
Yeah, sometimes you get those once in a lifetime kind of guys. Another question from Frode. He wanted to know, did Chuck already have dynamite in his hands when he first came to the pit, or is this something he trained for at the pit?
That's a hard one because he didn't really have that kind of skill set when he came to me. Because I got him real early. I got him before he ever fought. So he wasn't really a fighter per se. I mean, he was a fighter in his heart, but he didn't really have that skill set. He was a strong kid, really strong, and he probably hit pretty hard, but I think that was all, I'm not saying my system, which probably it was, but I don't want to sound like I'm conceited.
Yeah, of course.
But I kind of am. And so his style, came from his natural ability and our training, my training, his training. Yeah, it was pretty much us working together, and our two systems, like his initial, what he wanted to do, and then what I trained him to do, kind of went together and created what it created. But I'll take a lot of credit for that. Thank you very much.
That's entirely fair enough. Hey, we've got one more fan question, John. It's from Combo69. He just wanted to ask about Tim Kennedy, who was trained previously at the pit. He had a bit of a controversy surrounding his fight with the Stoolgate incident. What did you think of the situation? And do you believe the fight should possibly be overturned?
And to be honest, I love both guys, Yoel and Tim. I think if it was if it was overturned, it could be, maybe just rematched. I think that would be fair, and I think both guys wouldn't mind that.
Yeah.
I think it was a crazy turn of events, and I think it was definitely a humongous advantage. That 30 seconds was fight changing, and it would be like saying, to me, you could put it this way: for him to give Yoel that extra 30 seconds, and Yoel is an unbelievable athlete, obviously a freaking champion wrestler. I mean, unbelievable, but he was completely pooped, and he was obviously at 30 seconds. He was glued to the chair. So it's not like he was waiting around, standing up, pacing. I mean, he was like, but if you gave Tim 30 seconds on the other end of that, so if you gave Tim 30 seconds towards the end of the round when he had him hurt, remember that? Oh, yeah. Yeah, so can you imagine if you give Tim the 30 seconds? Exactly. How do you think it would have gone then?
Yeah, no,
so instead of giving Yoel 30 seconds on the tail, coming out to the corner, maybe it could have been turned around and the timekeeper could have waited 30 seconds to ring the bell. What do you think would have happened then? I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. It's one of those things. I do agree. It'd be good to see a rematch. John.
Yeah, it was the king. I don't think it was anybody's single person's fault per se. Definitely wasn't Yoel. He wasn't the one ringing the bell. So, but it definitely leaned against Tim, and Tim, I think, would have had a huge advantage if he got an extra 30 seconds to pound on Yoel before the end of the round.
Yeah, I agree. John, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. I mean, we've covered a lot of topics today. Guys, don't forget to follow John Hackleman on Twitter at @pit_master. And John, what was that website that people can check out for your online dojo?
thepitonlinedojo.com.
There you go. So, guys, don't forget to check that out.
It's going to be the best. It'll make you a UFC champion, I guarantee it, if you have a chin. Or it'll make you the baddest dude out there that isn't a UFC champion.
Well, there you go.
Hey, thanks, guys. I love your show, and anytime you need anything, man, I'm here.
Awesome. That means a lot to us. And, of course...
Throw shrimp on the barbie for me.
We definitely will. Thanks so much, John. Thanks for coming on. You have a great day.
All right. No worries. Thanks. Bye.
So there you go, guys. You want to be a UFC champion? John Hackleman has an answer for you. And you know what, Cass? We've had this. I believe this is the third time old Hackleman's been on the show, and it's just a pleasure to have him. And every time he's on the show, we always learn something new. So yeah, just a great guest, and almost a part of the Submission Radio family by now.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of times when we get guys like John Hackleman and Coach Wink and Javier Mendez, all those guys, not only are they very old school, but they're very honest. And they've always got a lot of good stories because they've done so much. They've been around the world. They've trained so many different fighters. They've got a lot of experience, a lot of good stories to tell. And, these guys aren't young fighters with a lot to lose. They've basically done everything, and they're just training guys. So they have no reason to bullshit. They've just got basically tons of stories and tons of interesting things to say. But speaking of young fighters, I mean, World Series of Fighting, still a new company. They had their 14th show over the weekend. I believe it was actually just today. Main eventing was obviously Jake Shields versus Ryan Ford. Now, I don't think we have too much time to talk. We've got around about 15 to 10 minutes to finish off the show. So we're just going to talk about World Series of Fighting and also cover Bellator as well. Jake Shields versus Ryan Ford. I mean, pretty quick fight. What did you think of this one, Dennis?
Well, I wasn't very impressed near the start of the fight when, Shields got, almost knocked down by Ford. I thought, uh-oh, what's going on here? Now, the Shields showed that he didn't want to keep the fight standing. Basically, he tasted one of the punches and he wanted to get the fight to the ground as quickly as possible. I don't think I've seen Shields shoot for a takedown as desperately as he did in this fight before. It was, once he got it to the ground, obviously, Ford is a great striker and not the best grappler, especially when it comes to, Shields being an amazing, extraordinary grappler. So, once he took him down, it was sort of riding on the wall there and, a win for Shields. But the big question for me is, I mean, Ford's a great striker, but him landing that shot across Shields' chin, is that a good sign? I don't know. Like, I feel like maybe Shields maybe underestimated his striking a little bit, or everybody gets caught. It's a tough game, but I was a little bit unimpressed with that. But Shields finished the fight. He submitted Ford, but I'm curious to see who they can give him to sort of challenge him in World Series of Fighting. Obviously, there's some big names there, but I want to see him challenge that, and I don't want to see him versus guys that he can really exploit in the grappling area. I want to see him versus some guys who are good in the grappling area because I want to see him tested. What did you think, Cass?
Yeah, I think this is a good, nice little return fight for Jake Shields. I mean, he hasn't fought for quite a while. His last fight was obviously against Hector Lombard in March 15th of this year. That was a pretty brutal fight. Hector Lombard absolutely ragdolled him in a way that we've never seen Jake Shields ragdolled. You mentioned before about desperate takedowns. That's a fight where we saw quite a few desperate takedowns from Jake Shields. As far as the striking goes, I mean, that's Jake Shields. He's never had that, elite, world-class striking. He's been in the UFC. He has decent striking, but I mean, he's not exactly knockout artist. And it hasn't evolved a huge deal, over the years in his UFC tenure. And he does start the fight off quite slow, a bit of a feeling out process, and that's usually when he gets tagged. We obviously saw Jake Ellenberger absolutely unleash on him back in 2011. And I think with that strike, it wasn't so much that Jake Shields was rocked. I think he leaned back as the strike hit him, and I think he tripped over. So I wasn't too alarmed by it. And I mean, I pretty much predicted this is the way that it was going to be in terms of the fight. Jake Shields goes in there, he grapples guys. He sometimes does get hit. Dan Henderson gave him a few good ones. That fight was like a Frankie Edgar performance in the first round against Gray Maynard in both their last two fights. But once he gets comfortable, once he settles in, once he sort of wakes up a little bit, he takes guys down, and he usually either goes for a submission, goes for a choke, or he basically, controls them for 5 rounds. And in this case, it was the prior. And if you look at some of Ryan Ford's fights, I mean, he is a very dangerous striker. He knocks guys down, he either knocks them out or he knocks them down, then he goes for submissions. In this case, obviously, Jake Shields didn't really have to worry too much about being submitted. Obviously, he had the better grappling chops. He did have to watch out for those power shots. So I think, given that he submitted, much, much better guys. I mean, he recently beat, obviously, Tyron Woodley. He beat Damian Maia. He beat Akiyama. And he, of course, submitted Robbie Lawler. So I didn't really think Ryan Ford was going to give him too much of a problem. Interesting fun fact about Ryan Ford, every single fight he's fought has been in Canada. I mean, he's fought all over the Canadian world, from Edmonton to Halifax to Calgary, back to Edmonton to Rama, Ontario, and then back to Edmonton against Jake Shields. So, look, it's good to see Shields back in there. He got an opponent that wasn't going to absolutely kill him. He passed his first test, and he called out John Fitch afterwards after a few prompts from Bas Rutten. You or me, Dennis, we love when guys call people out. It's absolutely ridiculous when people say, I'll fight anyone that the UFC or Bellator or World Series of Fighting puts in front of me. You have to call people out. That's how you get those big fights. Listen to Chael Sonnen. He may be a lot of things, but he knows what he's doing. It's good to see him call out John Fitch. As some people may or may not know, these guys I'm not sure they used to spar together, but there was that training session, that video, you can actually see it on YouTube, of them grappling, and it was extremely competitive. So now if they actually go together in an MMA fight, this is going to be awesome. These guys are very much parallels of each other. Obviously, both strong wrestlers, Shields with that American Jiu-Jitsu, and hey, it could be, if John Fitch beats Husama Palhares, it could be Shields versus Fitch for the World Series of Fighting title. Grapplers cancel each other out. This could be a really exciting fight. What about you? What did you think, Dennis?
Yeah, one of the things I like to see from Shields, I know that World Series, like you mentioned, the John Fitch fight seems like a pretty cool thing. And yeah, we love it when people call people out, but I'd love to see him advance his skill a little bit. And I'm hoping that, I'm hoping, like you mentioned, with the striking, he's never been the best at it, but I'd like to see him advance his skill in the striking. But what I can see from Shields is he does look a little bit more aggressive. So maybe in the World Series of Fighting, in order to get back in the UFC, he wants to show more of an aggressive side, get a lot more finishes, be a little bit more exciting. Who knows? Maybe that's one of his plans. And yeah, the John Fitch fight would be really interesting. Fitch, obviously, not the captain of AKA anymore. Now it's Daniel Cormier. So, that's some big news in the week there. But one of the things about Shields that I really admire is some of his coaching skills. I was watching The Ultimate Fighter, and the guy is a great, great coach. He really knows everything that there is to know about the mental side of the game, and he's a great coach in terms of the skill side of the game. And some of the girls in the house, he dropped around. One of the Aussie girls, her father passed away, unfortunately, and he was there. He experienced a similar emotion, and he was there for her. I thought, hey, this guy is a really, really great coach. And I was really almost, not shocked, but really sort of admired his skill in the coaching department there. So there's another skill set that I don't know if many people knew that Jake Shields had. He's a pretty exceptional coach. But it's definitely a good start for his time in World Series of Fighting, and it'll be interesting to see what happens with him next. We'll be watching closely. We'll be watching closely to see what happens.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, across the pond at Bellator 128, some interesting outcomes happened tonight. We're going to talk about the main event mainly, but we'll just obviously touch on the undercard or the main fight card. In the middleweight division, kicking off the card, you had Emiliano Sordi defeating Bubba McDaniels. The bad luck continues for Bubba, man. This guy cannot catch a break. Got choked out in his few fights in the UFC and in the Ultimate Fighter, and in this case, 58 seconds into the first round, got caught with that guillotine choke. Alexander Sarnowski, or Tiger Sarnowski, defeated Dakota Cochran. Man, that was a sick fight. That was a really, really awesome fight. Really, really exciting first round. And, man, Tiger was extremely, extremely aggressive. Absolutely overwhelming Dakota. Great fight. By contrast, Michael Page, who generally has fantastic fights, had a really, really lackluster fight against Nashon Burrell. Burrell really brought it to him, but his main attack was basically cage control. Michael Page, fantastic kickboxer, highlight reel knockouts. If you haven't seen the tornado kick from MVP Michael Page, go check it out now. It's on YouTube. Nothing of the sort this time, though. Nashon, he brought it to him, but unfortunately, he didn't have too much offense. Michael Page still looked impressive, but before you call him a John Jones or Anderson Silva, he definitely has a few things to work on. If he can't get that distance, he showed that he wasn't quite as effective, even though he was in control. Now, the main event, bantamweight title fight. Joe Warren coming in, the challenger, Eduardo Dantes, obviously coming in the champion. Dennis, what did you think of this fight?
I'm a fan of the bantam. I'm a fan of the bantamweight. I am, I love watching them. I'll be honest, I haven't seen too many fights in Bellator in the bantamweight division, but I was really taken aback by this fight. It was such a great back and forth fight. It was one of those. It was one of those classics. It's an instant classic in my book. It's one of those things that I'm sure they'll have a rematch down the road, but it may never live up to the magic that happened, that night. I was really impressed with both fighters. Obviously, Dantes, just an amazing striker. Such an exciting fighter to watch, and Warren, just such a great wrestler, such a gritty guy, so much heart. It was just a really great fun fight to watch. Big John McCarthy, refereeing the fight, and who else would you want refereeing a fight like that? John had a lot of decisions to make during that fight that we'll talk about some of the stuff that happened and some of the decisions that he had to make. But I thought personally he did a great job as a ref. He was on top of all the action, all the stuff that was going on there. There was a little bit of trunk grabbing. There was obviously an illegal strike later on in the fight there. There was some other stuff going on, like cage grabbing and stuff like that. And I find that John McCarthy's all over that stuff, and especially with the eye pokes, he's really going, close your fist, close your fist. I like that. I like it how John's on top of all that stuff. And, Dantes has a cool tattoo on his shoulder. Is that a Mortal Kombat tattoo on his shoulder, Cass?
I actually don't know. I didn't notice the tattoo, but I'm definitely going to check it out now. You mentioned Big John McCarthy. Yeah, I really like the way that guy works. There's things that he does. Obviously, with an eye poke, you don't get 5 minutes. But Big John McCarthy does a lot of smart things where he'll bring in a doctor and he'll get the guy's eye checked out. He does a lot of things so that he doesn't have to take a point away, you know, where he'll get a doctor in, get things checked out, and that gives guys time to recover, you know. Kind of like with, there was that interesting part where Joe Warren, he had him in, I don't know, like this crazy upside down crab control. I'm gonna butcher that, so I'm not gonna attempt to name it. But he obviously threw that kick. You know, they were both upside down, both inverted, and he threw that kick to Eduardo Dantas' face. Rather than taking a point away, you know, Big John, he sort of took Dantas aside, got the doctor to come in, and that gave him, like, I don't know, 30 seconds, at least a minute and a half of time to recover, you know, so that no one could say, you know, he was rocked from the kick. As far as the fight goes, man, this is an absolute classic. And to be honest, I know a lot of people didn't seem to give Joe Warren much of a chance. Obviously, the interim champion coming in, I honestly thought this is exactly what was going to happen. I didn't think it was obviously going to knock Dantas out or anything like that. And Joe Warren's had his share of knockout losses. But I just thought, you know, I really thought that the wrestling was going to prevail. And Dantas, you know, he doesn't really have the experience in terms of 5-round fights. You know, all his fights, they end in the second, first, third round. And he's an absolute killer. He's a really dangerous dude. But I just thought, you know, Joe Warren, he's got the experience on his side. People saying he's old school. And not always, but old school generally gives you experience, and sometimes gives you enough experience to, you know, have a few more tricks. I mean, you know, Joe Warren, he's only had one other 5-round fight, but I really thought that was going to be the difference maker. If it gets to those fourth and fifth rounds, Joe Warren's going to be a lot more successful. I mean, I'll give you an example. Lyoto Machida against Chris Weidman. You know, Chris Weidman's looked absolutely sensational thus far, but you saw in that fourth round, the fifth round, he started to slow down a little bit. And I think that's what happens when guys get to those championship rounds for the first time in their career, much like in the Ultimate Fighter when you see guys, you know, hitting those 3-round fights for the first time after being, you know, destroyers on the indie scene. And that was pretty much the reason why I thought Joe Warren was going to win that, and obviously his fantastic wrestling. You know, even with the wrestling, he charged across the ring, he got in the clinch, he got into Dantas' face. With Dantas, you got to be careful because of those knees, but man, he passed the test with flying colors. And what's exciting, he is now officially the first multi-divisional champ in Bellator history. He's held the featherweight title and now the bantamweight title. So even though he acts like the Chael Sonnen of Bellator, he's kind of like the BJ Penn in the sense. So hats off to Joe Warren, man. Congratulations.
Yeah, you know, and that's interesting. I think it's going to be a fight that Dantas looks back on and he sort of thinks, you know, maybe I should have thrown more conservative kicks. I think a lot of the kicks that he threw, you know, led to takedowns for Warren, and I think Dantas did a great thing. You know, he wanted the fight to be exciting and he stayed true to his form. But if he was a little bit strategic, and this is some backseat MMA coaching here, I have no idea what I'm really talking about. But in my opinion, if he wanted to be a little bit more conservative and strategic in some of his strikes, I think Warren would have gotten less takedowns. There was some back and forth stuff. One guy got a takedown, took the guy's back, and the other guy took the other guy's back and went back and forth. It was a very, very close fight. And, you know, Warren, he's good at what works, and that's wrestling. I was actually impressed with some of the strikes he mixed in there, some good knees. You know, he's not a one-trick pony by any means. He actually threw some really good strikes. I was pretty impressed. So Cass, but you thought the illegal knee, no need to take a point, right? Because I guess that was a big part, a bit of a controversial thing there. A lot of people thought if the point was taken, obviously Dantas would have probably won. What do you think? Do you think the point should have been taken? And before you give your answer, I'm going to say that I don't think the point should have been taken, but I think what I didn't like from Warren was, you know, he sort of kept pursuing his case where he's like, I was trying to push off the fence, you know, not really admitting any wrongdoing, but that was clearly a kick down to the face. And, you know, Warren's got to be a bit more careful with that. I don't think it was worthy of taking a point away, but I do think it might have busted him open a little bit, and I'm hoping that didn't sway the judges at all when they were making that decision. But, I mean, that round did, for me, Warren did win that round for me. Yeah, but what do you think, Cass? Do you think the point should have been taken by Big John?
Look, at the end of the day, Joe Warren was in control in that position anyway. So it's not like he was on the ground. It's like if Dantes was on the ground on his back and then he upkicked Joe Warren in the face, I think it would have been a little bit different because he would have been in a disadvantageous position. Joe Warren was in control as it is. Now, I'm not a psychologist, but if you watch the replay, the kick hits and Dantes doesn't really react at all. There's no flinching. I mean, there's a flinch, but, he wasn't really necessarily like, oh man, I'm in so much pain until Big John sort of broke them up. And then came the, oh man, my head hurts. I'm not denying that he was hurt, but I think it was a much better decision by Big John to not take a point away in a fight that was extremely close.
Would have changed the
really
outcome, I believe, if he took that.
Yeah,
point.
exactly.
It would have been a different outcome.
Yeah, I think a rematch is going to happen anyway because there's a fantastic back and forth, and I really stress the fact that it was back and forth fight. So the rematch is going to happen anyway. But I mean, the way Big John handled it is very smart. I'm assuming that he was doing it on purpose, but there was no need for that fight to end on a controversial note. I'm not going to say Joe Warren was winning in general up to that point. But I think, look, no, I don't think a point should have been taken away. And like I said before, he took Dantes aside. He gave him about a minute and a half break. So I think any damage sustained to that, by that kick, maybe not any damage, but I think most of it, Dantes was fine by the time they hooked him up. And I will make a comparison between this fight and the Robbie Lawler and Johnny Hendricks fight. And you might be thinking, why the hell would you do that? They were two very different fights. And they were. Johnny Hendricks versus Robbie Lawler, it was basically a striking fight. I mean, I wouldn't go as far as to say boxing, but the guy stood in the pocket and basically had a war on the feet. In this one, it was really just, an exemplification, or I don't know if that's a word, but this fight exemplified mixed martial arts. You had everything. You had wrestling, you had ground, you had sweeps, you had strikes, you had flying knees, Muay Thai boxing. You had everything. It was absolutely awesome. And, but in this fight, it really came down to probably the last 2.5 minutes. I think once Joe Warren got that takedown, much like Robbie Lawler got taken down by Johnny Hendricks, they both had that, like, fuck, I've just lost this kind of moment. And I think Dantes kind of faded in those last 2 minutes because I think he realized, man, I think I've lost my chance. Honestly, for a fighter and for anyone, it's very, very, very hard to come back from something like that because if it's been close and, you get taken down in those last 2 minutes, you got to think like, man, I have to get up in the next 30 seconds or so to really make my case that I've won this round.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you there. And, you mentioned that it has everything that you could want from a fight. And, I guess one of the things that really caught me was it just had a lot of heart. There were two guys out there that were just going at it. There weren't any, little strategic moves to just lie on top of the other guy, just strategically win the title. I think this is big for Bellator. I don't think people understand how big this is for Bellator. They really need a couple of other marquee guys, that they can market as a rematch. I think this is a great start for the bantamweight division. And, I'm going to go as far as to say this is one of my favorite bantamweight fights that I've seen in a long, long time. I mean, all the Aussies out there listening, I know that we don't really get Bellator down here, so live, that is. So if you guys do get a chance, check out the fight. It is an absolutely fantastic fight. I will say that I thought, and this is coming from my weird obsession with production values. I will say that I enjoyed the production values in this one. I thought Bellator did a good job. I actually don't mind that Jimmy does that thing where he props up his scorecard. I don't mind that. I like that. I think it's a good topic for discussion. People see it. They're like, all right, well, this is where Jimmy's at. It's good for a lot of the guys that, don't really watch MMA, all the time, and they're a little bit confused. It's good for the guys that, walked out for a couple of rounds and wanted to see what's going on in the last couple of rounds. I thought that was a smart move by Bellator. I thought it was a tight little show, and this is going to create a lot of hype going into the future, and it's going to create a lot of hype in their bantamweight division. I'll even go to say that, Joe Warren's probably, got the golden rub now after that fight. People want to see what he's going to do next. And if there is a rematch, I know you and me are going to watch it, Cass. We're going to watch it live. So I think, they probably made a lot of fans from that main event. If anything, if I can't compare it to the Stephan Bonner and Griffin fight there at the end in the finale of The Ultimate Fighter, but I think it might have a similar effect in a way. I think it will get a lot of fans to the sport, and I think to Bellator, and I think in the most important way, they're not there for Tito or a Rampage or an ex-UFC fighter. They're there for some of the young guys or some of the Bellator bred guys. And, I think that's important for a company to create your own stars. I think they might be onto something here.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with you. And you mentioned the little scorecards from Jimmy. I used to love when Eddie Bravo, or they'd have Eddie Bravo's ones, in the UFC. Just one more thing on the fight. Just one more thing that I wanted to touch on. Just in terms of, Eduardo Dantas, you mentioned how, if he fought a little bit more cerebrally, Joe Warren may not have gotten those takedowns. I would agree with you there. I think if he was maybe a little bit more patient and maybe didn't let Joe Warren charge in quite as much, I think he would have had a little bit more success. I think, he's a really young guy and he's going to grow a lot. I mean, he's got so many years to really evolve. Joe Warren, he's a veteran. I think to a degree he has either reached or is slowly reaching his ceiling. With Eduardo Dantas, he's got a lot of room for improvement. I think because he was so confident in his ground game, he didn't mind going down to the ground. And to his defense, man, he swept Joe Warren a lot. There was a lot of sweeps in that fight, and he was very impressive. That was probably one of my favorite things about that fight. Sometimes you see guys, strong wrestlers, they take a guy down, they sit on him, and they stay on him, and it doesn't make for the most exciting fight. Man, Eduardo Dantas, I'd say right up until the last 2 minutes, he was really in this fight. So, I completely agree, and I think it's fair to have, to a degree, that comparison between Griffin and Bonner, just because these guys really went to war. And I think, look, Bellator do have a star now in Joe Warren. I mean, they've always had him. He's always been a star, but now to say that he's a multi-divisional champion, I mean, that's huge, and he's doing his best Chael Sonnen impression. So I think Joe Warren is probably one of the best assets that Bellator have at the moment.
Yeah, that's right. And, both guys, have so much potential and being stars. And, Dantas, like you said, young guy, hopefully Bellator have locked him down for a while, because if I'm the UFC and I'm looking at Dantas, I'm going, I want this kid really badly. He's got a crazy, skill set that's exciting. Like you said, he's on his back, but he's reversing positions. He's just a stud, man. He reminds me of like an Anthony Pettis or something of the bantamweight division. He's got a good look to him. The Bellator need to put their promotional machines behind these guys. And what I'd like to see is let's not focus as much on Stephan Bonner versus Tito, or when Rampage fights someone. Let's focus more on the stars in Bellator, because I think there's enough potential there for people to really care about him. So that is something exciting there. And Scott Coker. It's a step in the right direction for the man. Very interested to see what they do with the boys next.
Yeah, I think we'll talk a little bit more in the future about Bellator 131. The fact that they have obviously Tito Ortiz and Stephan Bonner as the main event, as opposed to Will Brooks and Michael Chandler.
Bit fishy, isn't it? It's a bit fishy, isn't it? It's just like it's not the right direction to go in. You want your championship matches, or your Bellator guys up the top for a reason. And it even goes back, and people hate when we talk about this, to the old school pro wrestling thing. We like to see the top championship match up the top, and or we like to see But anyway, it's an interesting thing. I'm hoping that Scott Coker understands it's not the best thing to do, but yeah, we will talk about it down the track, and hopefully we had Tito on the show. Hopefully we can get Stephan on the show as well and have a bit of a chat about this whole debacle, which is the build up to this fight, which is
absolutely. Look, I think that's pretty much it for us for another week. We've talked about a few things. We've had a lot of great guests on the show. Just want to say a big thank you to our guests, obviously Jake Ellenberger, John Hackleman, and the always entertaining Brian Ebersole. Really appreciate these guys coming on. We've got a lot of guests coming up in the future. Actually, we don't even know who to pick. We have that many coming up. So stay tuned, obviously, to Submission Radio. And of course, the channel's going to have some big things coming up this week. There's some big fighters coming down, obviously, to Sydney and to Melbourne. This week, it's going to be a big one for the boys. Obviously, Alexander Gustafsson, Mark Hunt, Carl Noak, Donald Cerrone are going to be in Melbourne and Sydney. Check them out, guys. They're doing seminars on the 15th and the 16th. Sorry, the 15th of October, they're going to be at Hammer's Gym. On the 16th of October, they're doing an appearance at the brand new MMA Fight Store. And, of course, they're going to be at the Sydney Fitness Show on the 18th and 19th of October. For more details, everythingmma.com.au and mmafightstore.com.au. Make no mistake about it, we will be there and we'll be chatting to the guys as well, so look out for that too.
That's right, guys. And the YouTube channel, it doesn't just have a couple of good looking Australian guys talking about MMA. It's also got some awesome techniques. We're very lucky to work with some very reputable guys here from Australia, and including Kid Dale. But what we're very excited about is some of these Sambo techniques on our channel. I know all the grappling heads out there, and I've spoken to a few out in the jiu-jitsu clubs. They're pretty excited about some of these Sambo techniques. Latest one that's up on the channel is how to turn a kick into an ankle lock. And I'll tell you something, Me and Casper, we watched some pro wrestling back in the day. This one kind of looks a little bit but like a Boston Crab, but it's not, and you can use it. So you guys definitely should check it out. That's youtube.com/submission radio AU. The techniques come out regularly, I believe, Wednesday here in Australia and Thursday, Wednesday here in Australia and Tuesday in America, Cass?
Yeah, correct. Every single Wednesday here in Australia, and I believe Tuesdays in America, so extra early for the Americans. I've got an awesome one coming up this Wednesday, just a sneak preview.
Ooh.
It's basically how to break someone's leg from the mount, the full mount position.
What? That's crazy. This could change. This could change the UFC dramatically. I think we might have to show this clip to some of the guys when they come down to Melbourne when we catch up with them during the week. But yeah, guys, definitely check that out. There's a whole bunch of content on there, including Kid Dale talking for all the jiu-jitsu heads out there. Kid Dale talks about his first comp, how he was wasted, rocked up to this comp. You guys aren't going to believe the story. Obviously, Kid Dale's a favorite of ours, being an Aussie and stuff. Check out the channel. There's some old school interviews that I just want to bring your attention to as well. We spoke to Chad Mendes about his big fight against Jose Aldo. He had some stuff to say about Conor McGregor, and he had some stuff to say about this is back when he thought they were fighting in California, but now they're fighting in Brazil. He had some stuff to say about not really wanting to fight in Brazil again, obviously after what happened. Obviously, he's fighting in Brazil now. I guess you guys should definitely check this interview out, see what was going through his head. And obviously, the Vanderlei Silva feature interview that we had the pleasure of having, Vanderlei Silva exclusively, his first English chat since, the suspension, his talk of an appeal. Vanderlei is a great, great legend in the sport, and we were very, very lucky to have him on the channel and discuss, all things MMA. And he was very honest about his future and what he's planning on doing. So, guys, make sure you check that out too.
If you want to follow us on Twitter, obviously at SubmissionAUS. We're always down for a chat with any MMA fans or just anyone in general. Guys, we'll be back next week, same time, same place. Keep your eyes glued to the channel. That's it for another one from us for Submission Radio. Peace out.